Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to start the March, we're in March, right? March HRC meeting. Thank you all so much for being here. We're going to start with roll call.
Commissioner Bacchetti.
Here.
Commissioner Chin. Commissioner Ezrin.
Here.
Commissioner Morin.
Present.
Commissioner Onan.
Here.
Commissioner Savage. Commissioner Stone.
Here.
All right, and we have a quorum, right?
We do have a quorum, and before you go any further, I just wanted to do another part of a new part of our roll call, and that is I wanted to introduce Mary Constantino. Mary is the new program assistant for Human Services. She's taking over from Debbie Park, and in the next several months, she also will be transitioning into being my cohort here at the HRC meeting. Amy will be transitioning off after 20 years, 15, 13 years as the staff admin to that. So we will have a celebration of Amy's service at another time. But I wanted to introduce Mary. Mary's been with the city for over 30 years. 27. I am
You're just adding on.
I'm just adding on years. It always sounds good, right? So, but Mary has been the facility coordinator at the Lucy Stern Center. So if you've ever had an event or been to an event, she's the one who helped all those events go smoothly. And
She helped you World Music Day.
Yes.
There you go. So I'm very happy to have Mary as my colleague in Human Services. So I just wanted you to know who was sitting next to Amy here.
Yes. Yes, we're very sad to be losing Amy, but we're delighted to have you on board, Mary. So thank you for joining us. And I'd also, before we begin, like to call out that Mayor Nancy Shepard is here as our liaison to the City Council. Thank you so much, Mayor Shepard, for being here.
Multitasking as usual.
A mayor's work is never done. All right, so I think our next order is agenda changes, requests, and deletions. So is there any reason we need to move things around on tonight's agenda? Are we all good there? Anyone have a request? Okay, then I think the staff is okay with the agenda as is?
Yes, we are.
Okay, all right, then our next order is, are there any oral communications from the public? If so, give us your card. So these would be for things that are not on the agenda. So any item that's not on the agenda, all righty?
Not on the agenda. These three.
Okay. So we have Kimberly Lund, who is from the city of Palo Alto, I believe. So Kimberly, please come up.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Lund. I work for the Office of the City Clerk with the City of Palo Alto. And I was coming by tonight to announce that we are recruiting actually for 4 boards and commissions. So the HRC is one of them. The Library Advisory Commission, the Public Art Commission, and the Planning and Transportation Commission. So if anybody is interested in serving on the Human Relations Commission or any of these other 3 commissions, there's a flyer here that I have at the backboard, and it has our information. If you'd like more information about the recruitment or what it means to serve on a commission, and you're welcome to take any one of these flyers. So thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly, for helping us with our recruitment efforts. Amy, do you need this card? Okay. All right, anything else for oral communications? This one is for an agenda item, correct? Okay. All right, so our next item is approval of minutes. We had the February 13th minutes in our packets. Does anyone have any changes, corrections, additions? If not, does anyone have a motion to?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
And second?
Second.
All right, it's been, the motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose or abstain? All right, the minutes are approved. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, commissioners. Okay, so now we'll move on to our first business item. So as many of you know, we've been having an ongoing learning series on affordable housing, and tonight we have a speaker, and I was wondering if we could ask Minka to introduce our speaker for the evening.
Sure. I'd like to introduce Gary Goodman. He's a deputy public defender for Santa Clara County. Why don't you come up, Gary? I've had the pleasure of working with Gary for the last year or so on North County Alternative Services. As many of you know, that is the group that works with those in the justice system, nonprofit, homeless service providers, county mental health professionals, county Department of Drug and Alcohol officials, probation, to work with the unhoused that are involved in the criminal justice system. Gary has been a wonderful advocate in setting up a special court for the unhoused in the North County Courthouse here on Grant, and has been a wonderful advocate. And I'm very glad that he could be here today. So,
And haven't we known each other for 7 years? Oh no, that's just your.
I didn't exaggerate this time.
But I've known you for a long time.
Yeah.
Long time. Yeah, I think I had hair.
Yeah.
No.
Well, Gary, before you begin your presentation this evening, I just wanted to explain that while Gary is not directly involved with housing, the reason that Vice Chair Bacchetti and I asked me to reach out to him is that because many unhoused people go through the criminal justice system, once they have a criminal record, that just presents yet another barrier to their being able to transition into some kind of permanent supportive housing. So we feel like we'd like to go off in this direction a little bit with our learning series because we want to understand all of the impacts to the unhoused and all of the barriers that are keeping them on the streets so that we can better understand their issues and work with local nonprofits to help solve some of those issues. So, Gary, thank you so much for being here, and please.
Oh, my pleasure. I can tell you how the PAR court started. I'm not sure how.
You can just say the acronym, what that means.
And make sure your mic is on.
It is.
Okay.
Is it? I think
It should be glowing red.
it's glowing red.
Okay. Okay.
And PAR just means Palo Alto Review. It had to be named something, so I came up with PAR. And I don't play golf, or I do poorly, but it came up with something, and it was cute, and I couldn't name it after myself because that would be a little bit too egotistical. So PAR is what it was. And what happened was I was hired by my office in 1990, July 30th, 1990, and it's just, a lovely office, and it's great, and I love every day I go there. So when you get out of law school and you want to apply, something like that, it is it's not my only job, but it is a phenomenal job, and I think we do a lot of good work. I've been in Palo Alto primarily most of my career since 1991. I've been in Palo Alto, North County, and then North County actually had a Sunnyvale office for years and years, but that just closed about 4 years ago, and everything was consolidated up here at 270 Grant. Currently, we are located at 231 Grant, which is the old North County Mental Health Services, and before that, I think it was the DA's office actually in the 70s. And what I had seen is I would see the same people over and over again, but when you're 20-something years old, it's you go to court, you go to trial, you beat everything up, and that it's the fight because we are not social workers. But as I've gotten older, kids they've gotten older, they're friends, and you mature. And at some point, it dawned on me that I was seeing literally the same people over and over again for decades, which it didn't make any sense. And so I approached one of the judges, and I said, is there any way that we can get kind of a mental health court going like they do in San Jose? It's Judge Manley's Department 64, if anybody knows. It goes by a lot of names, but it's basically Judge Manley, and he's amazing. And what Judge Manley does is he brings all the services together at all levels and deals with them. And so I thought it would be good if he could bring his court up to Palo Alto. He might do it, but I could find one of the judges to do it. And he didn't want to let go. He wants to keep everything really close to him. And then the more I looked into it, I understood why. It's, he does a lot of state work, gets a lot of grant money, and a lot of that is based on money. I go, okay, so we continue to send people down to San Jose. Problem is, whether you have a house here, an apartment here, or you're homeless here, if this is where you are, this is your home, regardless if you have a roof over your head. And if I sent a North County person, and I'm talking 95% this is true, if not higher, to Judge Manley down in San Jose, the old Levi building. They call it Terrain now, but when I grew up, it was Levi because that's where the Levi plant was. There's your history lesson. And they would not appear. So then Judge Manley rightfully would issue a warrant. And then they would be up here, and then when the police or the sheriff or the Palo Alto, whoever got them, would then arrest them, come back into custody, and go back down to Judge Manley. Judge Manley would then, try to provide him with services, does an excellent job. And it is amazing what he does. I mean, how he cobbled together all the providers, everybody from, he tries to work with housing, but of course everybody knows that's the hardest thing in the world to do. But, the caseworkers, he actually gets doctors that can write scripts there, which unfortunately we haven't figured out how to do that up here. And just amazing things. But he would set them all up and then release them. And literally set a court date 3 weeks down the line, and they wouldn't show up. And I started talking to these people because I know them. I can't make it down there, Gary. I can't make it down there. And I'm on probation for, 1,000 years, it seems. And I have all these fines and fees, and it was just more stuff piling on, and I can't make it to San Jose. Light rail doesn't go there from up here. Everything, it's very difficult and expensive. So another judge, his name is Kurt Cumley, and he's currently not on the bench right now. He got sick, and I went to him, and I said, "Can I do this?" And he says, "Just do it, and you just send everybody to me, and we'll just start it off and see what happens." So I started sending people, and the people that I'm sending are mainly, homeless population, but I don't know if they're homeless or not because we don't ask but most of my clients, they're indigent, right? I mean, all of them are. They're all indigent. And started sending when they got a case, and what we deal with, unlike Judge Manley, he deals with them too, we deal with high users of the system and low offenders. So people that just repeat. You'll hear me say 647F. All that is drunk in public, or open container, municipal code violations from the city of Palo Alto and other municipalities. Some petty thefts, the trespassing. The people that ride the 22, and any those kind of crimes, for lack of a better term, because they are crimes, but no one, including the district attorney's office who prosecuted and who is my, adversary, really wants to prosecute those people. But what are you going to do? What are you going to do with my clients? What are you going to do with, quote, those people? And so that was the start of the PAR calendar, because my people, those people, whatever you want to call them, didn't want to go to Judge Manley. A lot of them just couldn't make it down there and didn't want to go because this is their home. Whether it's in a car, whether it's under a box, whether it's at, by the train station, whether it's in Linton Plaza, whether it's on the 22, this is their home. And so we started that court, and it actually kind of had to be court-based because they were arrested. They would come into custody. They wouldn't show up for their court appearances. And I started reaching out to different agencies like, Chad's here from Downtown Streets. They're phenomenal. And once I met with them, they actually opened the door and started introducing to me from Momentum for Mental Health is on California, right next to Molly Stone's, right? So I met Hyrie.
No one can pronounce his name.
Thank you. I don't want to do the poor person anybody's taking a day. Yeah, Shipper, a full service partnership for us. Okay, thank you. And I met him, and he was great. And then I was invited by Cindy Hendrickson, who's now left Palo Alto and in San Jose, to the North County Alternative Services, and she invited me, and that's kind of how it all started. So, and what we try to do is once we brought these, as I call them, providers in, I reached out to Drug and Alcohol Services, which is a huge part because they have the access, they have the resources to get to the sober living environments, to the residential treatment program, and then I went out and I contacted Goodwill. I'm not Goodwill. Salvation Army, and then actually it was hard to do, but we got a contact for the veterans, up on the hill. And they said they would start coming, and so we actually bring providers to the court when we have court. There's some in custody, and they're mostly out of custody. We bring them back. First, when they have their first problems, they come to me. We resolve their problems, whether it's do do this, that, and the other thing, and the case is dismissed, or whether they've pled guilty and they're on probation and they have to do, certain tasks. And then they check in with us, and I introduce them to, Chad or Hyrie or whomever, and try to get them services. And they do all the work. I just kind of am the intermediary pointing to where we go, and the court lets me do this. And the district attorney's office lets me do it too, which is phenomenal. And I don't think you get that really in any other area in San Jose. I know you don't get it in San Jose. They're trying to do it in San Jose. Kind of what we're doing, not Judge Manley, but what we're doing, those high users but low offenders that really no one wants to prosecute, and literally won't prosecute. But everybody also understands that they don't want somebody. If I own a small business, and when I was growing up, my family did, you come in the morning or in the afternoon and somebody right in front of your doorstep. That's not cool either. So, there's all these, competing forces. And what we try to do is get the people hooked up right in court with the providers, because what was in place before is they would have to call. They would have to call. It's called the gateway. And they would talk to this woman named Glory, who was very lovely, but it would just, their phone calls. And again, my clients, the homeless population or whomever, they're my clients. They're treated like chattel, and that's just not right. And so the fact that Chad and his people come, and Hyrie and his people come, and other people come, and I'm forgetting some of the other providers, all of a sudden there's a connection. And now all of a sudden my clients feel like I'm now accountable. And that goes a long way. And then, of course, there's the housing issue, which you guys deal with, and which they come to the North County Alternative Services. And I know that's a constant battle here. But if we can get them the proper services and then the proper guidance, they come back, every so often to my court, and we just see how they're doing. And eventually, we've had a lot of successes and we've had a lot of failures. And so it's very collaborative, and that's kind of what we do. I'm sure I'm leaving some things out. I know I am, but I only have so much time. And I've learned by doing this that if I don't speak quickly and I don't try to get as much out as possible, people lose interest immediately. I'm not saying you guys do, but they do. Because I was in San Jose for a meeting, and about setting up this par court in San Jose, and it was blank. And I understand that's a huge monolith down there, and we're small, but it was like, oh yeah, that's great. And then I'll see you in 6 weeks, and nothing was done after 6 weeks. Unlike here, we have an idea, and because of the providers that come, and they show up all the time. I talk to them on the weekends, at night. They email me constantly, which is great. I always tell them 24/7. And as a result, my clients now feel more a part of the community. And by doing that, when they have relapses, they feel bad. And that's a big first step. And before, the court always talks about carrot and the stick. Well, let me tell you something. My clients can do two things. They can take an ass kicking, because they've been taking an ass kicking since they probably were this big, and they can do time. They don't want to do time, but they can do time. What the providers like Chad's organization does is actually gives them a human connection and a human bonding, and it's really, really nice. And it can't be 1 to 100 or 1 to whatever. It has to be a small enough number that there's a connection, and that connection is what makes it successful. And so even if you can't get them housing right away, they're still working to get better. So not only we take them when they first start, and also I've worked with the courts and the district attorney's office. I get their records expunged and cleared, which makes it way easier to get jobs. And once they get jobs and they can, afford, a room around here, which is probably $1,000, right? There's one person off the roll. Once they clean up, everyone has family. You can pick your friends. You can't pick your family, and while your family doesn't want you when you're loaded and you're drunk and you're, whatever, right? Guess what? Once you clean up, your family takes you back. And around this area, I've noticed that most of my clients, have family in the area. They really do. They have family in the area. And it's always been my contention, once I get this thing going, that homeless population will decrease because the families will take them back. Because you'll take Uncle Johnny back when he's clean because you want him because he's your kin. It's when he's all messed up, you can't have him around your family because you've tried and that bridges have been burned. But those bridges get mended very quickly is at least my contention. So I think that will lower the amount of the homeless population, and I think it all comes down to the service providers. I'm just the guy in the courtroom, and the court, unfortunately, is the place where everybody comes and where the services are, and that's the bad part because, as we all know, it shouldn't be in the criminal court, but it is. And being a pragmatist till the day I die, that's what I'm stuck with. So that's what we're going to work with. And because of guys like Kurt Cumley and Cindy Hendrickson from the DA's office, I've been, and a good friend of mine are Jay Borowski and Jeff Rosen. They're behind it, and that's huge. And then I know Karen Fletcher from the probation. They're behind it too. And so that's essentially what it is. I hope I kind of explained it at least.
Gary, thank you so much for that overview. I'm still struggling, though, with how your PAR program is connected in any way to Judge Manley's program. It sounds like he started his program, and you sort of spun off a Palo Alto version.
Yes.
But then you mentioned going back to San Jose with your version. So what are the deltas, and how are these programs related, if at all?
Okay, they're not related at all. Judge Manley deals with everyone, and PAR deals with high users, low offenders. Probably 90% misdemeanors, maybe a few felonies here and there, a little bit of because of and I think the law will be changing, but drug possession is a felony depending on the type of drug for some reason. It just is. So if you have a little bit of cocaine, a little tiny bit, like a quarter pack of sugar, just pour it out, at the coffee place tomorrow, and that's a felony. Whereas if it's methamphetamine, that's a misdemeanor. So, it's just, for whatever law, you can go look at the legislative intent on all that and figure it out. So that's why we have some felonies, but not many. Judge Manley deals with really serious people, violent offenders, sex reg kind of guys. We don't do that. That's not what the PAR court is. He also deals with low-level people, too. Don't get me wrong. And he does a phenomenal job. And we spun off because the North County people have a very hard time making court dates in San Jose and making their court dates. So then what happens? They're arrested. So let's say they had a court date in San Jose, and they were doing well because Manley set them up, and they're set. And they don't show up to court because they forget. Who hasn't forgotten? I forget everything. The older I get, the more I forget. And they got a job, and they have a place to live, and they figured it out. And next thing you know, they're walking down the street, and Officer Joe knows, Mr. Smith. He goes, Mr. Smith, I know you because I've known you for 15 years. You have a warrant for your arrest, and hooks him up. So now he's going to be in custody now for a long time. And so what happens? He loses his job, he loses his place to stay, and probably more importantly, he loses his dignity. I have to start again. And so great question, and that's how it's spun off. So it's been called a lot of things, as I have been, but it's Manley light, for lack of a better term.
I have a question. When people have a criminal record, the clients that you see, are they barred from some services, social services that would help them?
It depends on the crime. I don't think that what we deal with in the PAR court really does, because like I said, it's a lot of drug and alcohol. But what it bars them from is getting a job, because they're on probation.
What about temporary housing, shelters, and overnight shelters.
You know, and I only reason I know this is because I go to the NCAS meetings, and we've had a lot of speakers about that. And it depends on, again, the type of crime. My bar clients are not barred, but I know people. You know, the term is what, housing first. Okay. I understand that. I'm sort of for that, but not really, because if it's housing first, and you put that person and you put him in a place and he has no support system like downtown streets, he's just gonna drink and smoke there, and so now it's all gonna be, and it's gonna fester there. They need the support people to work them through, like learn how to go to a job interview, get stuff off their record, or when you're put on probation, if anyone knows, you might be fined $50. You go, okay, it's $50. It's 50 times 300+%. So a $100 fine now it's about $400 or $500. And you get a couple of those, that's a lot of money. And if and that weighs on you. And so we take care of a lot of those, those fines and fees too, which is, once people, get back on their feet and are working. So it doesn't bar them from housing, depending on the type of crime. Sex reg does. Obviously, violent felonies does. Some felonies do. I don't know which ones do. I don't think simple possession does. I would imagine drug sales and things you can imagine would. But I know there's a list, and we've actually gone over that list before, Minka, about what does and what doesn't.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think Chad would probably have a better sense of that if that's
Yeah.
a real interest of the.
I mean, it really depends on. I'm Chad. It really depends on what program or subsidy program. You're recording.
Thank you. So it just really depends on what housing program we're talking about. I mean, a lot of affordable housing where it's based on your income, you would be barred if you had some kind of manufacturing or dealing charge or sex registrant charge, like Gary said. But as far as a lot of the subsidy programs, like Housing 1000, you might have heard of, which is like a county-wide initiative to try to house some of the most chronic homeless individuals. They basically say, as far as participating in the program and getting assistance to try to find the housing, there's no restrictions whatsoever, which is awesome. But then, of course, once you actually meet the person and you start to get to know their background, there are the barriers that I just spoke of. So you kind of have to be selective about where they can get housing, really get creative. So hopefully that fills it in a little bit.
And I know some of the housing stuff, and Chad, jump in, but some of it is you have to put down a deposit or something like that, Chad.
Yeah, there's a big push right now for holding deposits. So you'll go and you'll apply, and they'll be like, okay, we're gonna, based on just what we know already, maybe a credit check. We need you to put $250 down right now, and then they're gonna do the background check. But in order to even have a chance, you have to hold the unit. So we end up doing that a lot. It's one of the things that we try to build in flexible funding into our housing contracts so that we can do those kind of things. It's just kind of the reality, and we have to be able to build those realities into the work that we're doing.
So what we'll do at PAR is a guy who is doing well, has a job, starting to make some money, and they have a lot of fines and fees. They may not pay those fines and fees, but it'll go to collection. And if they get any kind of refund, the state takes it. So what we try to do is we try to, and we do a very good job out of it, I think, is to mute those fines so the state has nothing to take. So then they can use that money and put the down payment down for themselves. And it's two things. One, it's more resources for people that don't have that ability. But also, I think more importantly, it gives them a real sense of self-worth. And that's the process of the whole thing. It's like I can now stand on my own 2 feet because all my clients want to. They all want to. So.
How does PAR find these indigent defendants? Are the other courts referencing them to you as the entire public defender's office? a part of PAR?
So we deal with just the North County people. So somebody's arrested, somebody's given a citation, they're either in custody or they come to court out of custody, and they need representation. A couple of years ago, the Board of Supervisors in Santa Clara County gave us more lawyers, so we appear now at all arraignments. So misdemeanor arraignments, and we always did felony arraignments. So we appear at every misdemeanor arraignment in the county. And as a result, our lawyers are trained to pick up people like that. And it's not, and again, it's trained. It's not that hard. You see the same guy, 5 days out of 5 days, hey, you know what? You could use Gary. Let's get him to PAR and send him there. And you can tell by the type of crime, riding on the 22 or drunk in public or 15 open containers, and Lance Bear walks in with he's one of the city attorneys that for one of the agencies around here, and hey Gary, I have this guy, he has 15 of them. Can we do something with them? And then we'll funnel them to us. And the other thing too is if you have, and literally people can have. You just don't get one 647F, one drunk in public. You get 20 because it's a binge, right? And the resources aren't that you're drunk in public, I'm going to arrest you, you're going to go to jail. No, I'm going to cite you, let you sober up, I'm okay, move you along, and then eventually they'll get arrested or appear in court in that way. So we get them as they come to court, then they're culled, so to speak, and then I get them. And that's how we get them. That's why it's kind of court-based.
So I'm wondering what's going on with the program now that Judge Conley's been ill. Have you found another judge?
It's been great. I have Judge Allison Danner and retired Judge Diane Northway volunteered with no problem. Before them, it was Judge Selena Brown. And so all the judges will do it, at least in North County. And now, it's funny because some of the older judges kind of go, huh? The newer judges like Allison Danner, all for it. Like, yes, she's just a yes. And Northway, I've happened to know her for 20 years, so yes, that's fine, Gary, just do it. Some of the older judges kind of look askance at it, but they know that things have changed, with AB 109, 1170H, that kind, everything has changed.
You're going to have to explain what this means.
You know how there used to everybody go to prison, and now it's kind of like everybody stays in county jail if it's for a low level. It was Governor Brown did it 2 years ago. Right. Well, they're
Richmond, people stayed in jail, county,
so and so things have changed, and then and it's more. There's a term that probation uses. Evidence-based practices, instead of probation has changed. Usually, you would go out. Oh, you didn't test, or you didn't show up when you were supposed to. Okay, you're going to go to jail now for 7 months. And literally, that's what it was. And I said 7 because that was I saw for years 7 months. So now it's okay. Why didn't you show up? How come? What happened? And they're trying to work with them more. And that's a really nice thing that probation is really intricately involved in the PAR calendar too, because they want to deal with that too. So if somebody has a low level case and they're also on formal probation for another case, we're even allowed to bring those up to see why they violated probation on a more serious case. If it was just not showing up or not getting a job, because if you don't get a job on probation and you're, quote, able to, that's a violation of probation, or it can be. And everybody is now realizing that it's just not cost efficient. I pay taxes like anyone else. It's a lot of money to house somebody. And then they get out and they start from the bottom again. So this is more, build them up, work with them. And again, it comes down to the providers. That's the housing first. Housing first is great as long as there are people like Downtown Streets that have, people that work with my clients at that level. Because without Downtown Streets and projects like that, housing first does not work. And there's no way, because I know exactly what my clients are going to do. They're going to drink and they're going to smoke under a roof. But when they're being watched by Chad and his folks, they don't suffer fools. They not at all. They bust them up like no problem. They go, no, you can't do this, and the clients respond to that because there's a one-on-one connection. And I get emails from Chad's people all the time on the weekends. They are, they roll their sleeves up and they go in there. Hiree does the same thing. It's amazing. And that's why I think it works, and it'll just get better and it'll work more and more.
Good question. In the series that we've had, and we've talked to a number of people, as a matter of fact, in one of the sessions, we had 3 case managers come and talk to us. Irene was one of them. And it sounds like your network, people can get into it, but I'm wondering whether case management is a key. You broker, as I understand, you broker relationships so that somebody who comes to you gets connected with other services. But do they get connected in a case management kind of way so that there's kind of a broker who's part of their life that
Yes.
can connect them with other things they need, not just the one agency? I mean, Downtown Streets team is distinctive in many ways, and I wish it were all over, but
Me too.
it doesn't handle everybody. So do you have access to case managers so that they can stick with somebody who comes to you and help them work through to housing and independence?
Well, the housing stuff is, of course, if we can kind of keep housing out of it, because there's no housing, right? I mean, there's very little of it, and it's very hard to get. But it's the case manager. So what I do in court is, let's say somebody's in custody. Chad will be there, or one of the case managers. And what my courts will allow me to do is actually bring those people up into the box where they sit. Where anybody on jury been on jury duty, or at least been in a courtroom where the jury sits. Well, that's where in custody clients sit. So when there's no jury, that's where we call it the box, but that's where they sit. And the caseworkers actually go up there and sit next to and have that connection. What do you need? How can I hand you? Are allowed to give them, their contact information. When you get out, can you call me if they need to get out on because people get released from jail really late at night, from Milpitas. They'll come and tell me, like, caseworker, he can't take a regular release. Give me an AM release. So they'll release them in the morning. So I can then come and get them, or they have light rail access to come and see me. And then they meet with their caseworker, and then the caseworkers, like Downtown Streets, and they're my primary caseworkers. Works through all, getting them, getting them, their benefits back, teaching them how to go to a job interview, getting them to work. Because the hardest thing in the world to do is to get up every morning and go to work. I mean, it's easy to sleep till noon and mess around and go to bed when you want. The hardest thing to do is get up every morning and 5-6 days a week and work. And that's what Downtown Streets does. I don't know if that answers your question, but they're the ones that actually do all that brokering of the services. So I just bring them there so they can have that one-on-one connection. And once they have that one-on-one connection, that's what clicks, I believe. Other than how it used to be, you'd have to make a phone call. And, from jail, with a lot of noise, and hopefully it's heard.
When people slip out of your network, what are the causes for them slipping out besides their own behavior? Is it lack of certain kinds of resources that they needed at the time that weren't there?
It's probably a combination of everything, because if, and I can just picture it, if I get out of jail, I meet up with Chad, I have a caseworker like Julia, and I'm talking to her, and she's helping me out, and she's teaching me all this stuff, and I'm trying really hard, but it's, January, and it's raining, and I'm taking my voucher, for my housing voucher, and putting it over my head, because that's the only thing that's housing me. I might just go back to the pipe or start drinking again. And then I get underneath, or I get on the 22 again, because that I can stay warm. And next thing I know, somebody's called the police and I get arrested again. So, that's how it happens. And sometimes it happens because, there's some mental illness there, or, that addiction is so strong they go right back to it. I'm not saying that doesn't happen all the time also.
I think what I hear you making a point is that a lot of this can go only so far if there's no housing at the other end.
100%. But he's right. That's why it's housing first is great, but you need case managers. You have to have the both in the right, and I would argue to a large extent, case managers are almost more important, because if the case managers can make that real big connection with the client, I think you're going to lose a lot of the clients, not in a bad way, in a good way, and their families, at least in this area only, will take them back. Now, again, that's just me, in my mind. Now, obviously, there'll be a large number that won't, but there's going to be some. And I'm telling you right now, at this point, what senator said, $1 billion here and $1 billion there, and all of a sudden you have something here? Well, one person here and one person there, you got something. And that's one less person that, that the big brother has to take care of.
In your experience, where does Palo Alto stand in terms of the amount of housing it has for low and very low income people?
What they have, Chad, help me out at Barker, and what do they have?
I mean, you basically have the Opportunity Center, which is compacted by a long waiting list.
And they're great.
Yeah.
I know, but
And then
in
the
comparison with other communities,
okay.
Sunnyvale and Cupertino and Santa Clara and so on, are we better, worse, the same? Is this
I mean, we have very few options here in Palo Alto. And we have, like Gary said, a lot of folks that we work with here in Palo Alto, both on Downtown Streets team, our model, our work experience program, and in the park court, have roots here in Palo Alto. And they typically have to be kind of sent south, so to speak.
And that's, thanks, Chad, because so if there's housing in South San Jose, right, Jeff? South County. There is not a chance in the world that most of my clients will stay one day there, because that's not their family. Their home is here, whether it's under the bridge or in a house on University. Their home is here, and they're going to come back here, and their friends are here. The little connection maybe with their family is still here, even though they won't take them in. They're still their family. They know the Opportunity Center. They know where they can get their meals. They know where they can volunteer, because we'll get their meals. That means they're just having their hands out. No, all of them work at the churches that they all volunteer. They love to do all that stuff. I mean, these people are working their asses off. And so when you put them in South County off Monterey Road, what's there? Nothing from them. For people in Monterey, down there off Monterey in South County, that's great. They're used to that. They know how to get along. But you can't put a Palo Altian down there or somebody in Sunnyvale. And one of the big things we work with is, if you live in if you live in Palo Alto, would you go to Sunnyvale? That's about as far south as you could go.
Part of what I hear you saying is that I'll call it a myth for the moment, or a tale or a story, that Palo Alto is a magnet for the homeless is absolutely not true. It sounds to me like this isn't such a hot place to be homeless unless you're lucky enough to be in the downtown street team or the Opportunity Center.
Well, how do you answer something like that? It's a magnet? No, I don't think anybody wants to be homeless. And I think people stay because this is what they're familiar with.
So it's not like it's attractive to people who aren't familiar with it.
Somebody from, you're going to always have a certain percentage of people that, are going to come here because, we hear that. They're transient, they're transient. They're going to, then next thing you know, they're going to be in Redwood City, and then they're going to be in San Francisco, and they're going to be, no, I'm talking about the people that I've seen for 20 years that are, that went to Coverly, that actually are from here. The other thing Street Team's done a great job, Chad, I think you're on your payroll.
I know, right?
Is the not so much now with the new vets, but the Vietnam vets, they hate the VA, and rightfully so, from what I've learned. But Street Teams and the way the VA is working now, they're really bringing those people back together again. Because I have a couple clients that were Vietnam vets now have finally gone back to the VA, and they fought me tooth and nail and they said bad things about the VA, and they just didn't say, oh, we hate them. They gave me evidence of why they hated them. Because of Chad and his group and Hiree and what he does, brought them back and met with some of the VA people, and now they actually have established, relations with them again. Now the VA people, so therefore they'll be off your roll, right? Because the VA housing is farther away, but that's a little community in and of itself, right? So that VA person, now he's back in the fold of the VA, doesn't mind going to South County where all the beds are. So then that person is, quote, gone, for lack of a better term, which, of course, is a terrible term.
Can you
And
tell us that this is complicated?
no, I think you know that. And the other thing is, that when we started PAR, people wanted to call it, homeless calendar and things like that. That's ridiculous. I mean, really, what else do you want to call the people? So that's why, you got to be, and I am not a very sensitive person. You can ask my wife. But you have to be careful of, how you address it all, because it's a fragile population.
I think Hiree taught us, I think it was Hiree who taught us last time to say unhoused, the unhoused. The more I thought about it for a week. I thought, well, yeah, I'd prefer to be called unhoused. Can't find a house as opposed to homeless.
Right.
Yeah.
And I
That
still
struck
use
to the
home,
core
yeah.
of me. Yeah. And just my curiosity is, so Manly now, just from reading in the newspapers, there must be studies galore showing the benefits of what he's doing just mathematically. This was what I would call a Commissioner Bacchetti question. Are there metrics? Are there ways of showing that PAR is contributing contributing economically? I think it's don't misunderstand me. I'm not challenging you. I think it's incredible and wonderful. But I'm just curious if there's a self-interest that's economic that's also spurring this.
And I probably should be better with my statistics, because I haven't been, and I didn't even consider that. And actually, my boss, Molly O'Neill, said, you got to pay more attention to that. And what we do that's different than Manly is Judge Manly keeps people on probation on multiple cases. And so, and I understand why. I tend to think that, and I try to put myself where some of my clients are, and it's like, I try to make things as simple as possible. So 1 grant of probation is better than 16 grants of probation, because it's 16 fines, and even though they don't have to pay them, they're still hanging over somebody's head. And so we dismiss a lot of cases. The district attorney's office agrees to dismiss a lot of cases, so that would lower our numbers, but the people are still in the system. We probably have, I think this last week, I think we gained like 15, and we got, quote, rid of 2 or 3, because, but they love to come to court and tell you why they're doing it. I know Chad and I were talking beforehand that he has a client that he called me on who's doing great, and everything's going to be expunged on May 6th. And we're talking about, well, should he come to court to show everybody there is, an end? And at least my court, I think we're very, we work in the parameters of the law. You're on probation for your period of time. You can't run it over. It's that the law is the law. I have to stay within that little box. And I think, and if you don't succeed and you don't want to do it anymore, you don't have to do it. I'll catch you in another week. I can guarantee you'll be arrested again, and then we'll get them again. So just because you failed doesn't mean we're going to forget about you. Just because you failed 15 times doesn't bother me. It doesn't make me mad. It means, are you ready now? And if you're not ready, well, then maybe you're going to stay in jail, because it's not fair to the people that own businesses that you're squatting on their doorstep when they're trying to do business. I understand that part of it too. You can't, do your business behind, Walgreens, on Middlefield. That's just not cool. And the caseworkers, I think, agree with that too, right, Chad?
Yeah, a little bit on top of like what you're talking about as far as data and kind of metrics. I think this is a very kind of grassroots court operation that just kind of sprang up because Gary took the lead, and then he got a hold of some service providers, and just kind of happened. So there hasn't been any energy really towards keeping track of things like that. There's no funding to do that kind of thing. It obviously, I mean, I think it would be really helpful, right? To know what would the long-term effects and how many people that used to be coming to court are no longer and stuff like that. Just to give you some background as far as like it's very unstructured in that way.
I missed when it began. I got distracted.
It started, kind of started underground in October of 2012.
Oh, so it's not been that long.
No, it hasn't been that long at all. I think it was 2012, 2000. Yeah, I think it was October. I started doing it just because the judge who was the presiding judge at the time didn't want to step on Judge Manley's toes. And I understand why, but, whatever, move your toes. It just wasn't working. But again, Manley is an invaluable resource. I appreciate him more now than I ever did. And I still send people down there that need that kind of intensive care, or some people move down to San Jose and then they can go to Judge Manley.
So Gary, I think we're running a little over time, but no, because I would love to keep you here all night. But I actually have one more question. Because you had mentioned that you have not found a way to get medical providers to come the way that Manley's court does. So is that an issue? Because I know a lot of unhoused people suffer from varying degrees of mental illness. So is that a gap in your PAR system?
It is a gap, and I don't know how to do it because I'm probably too lazy, and I have to figure it out, and I will. Because actually, the last thing I was dealing with, and I was again talking to Chad about it, was hardest thing I've dealt with are traffic court. Because as we all know, there's people that live in their cars around here, and they get tickets, and then they lose their, and then they forget to go to court, and then it goes to warrant, and then they lose their car, and then, oh Lord, then there's more people. And so Commissioner Madden over at 270 Grand Avenue has agreed to work with the PAR clients, just like, the judges on the misdemeanors do. And on on the next meeting, NCAS meeting on next Tuesday, I'll present a little, here's how we can do it, because that's how far we're going down. And that was a big issue. That was a lot of, Hyrie would call me, Chad would call me, caseworkers would call me and say, hey, he got a jaywalking ticket. Now he owes $640. He can't pay that, and it's driving him crazy. And then he missed another ticket for, fare evasion, and he owes $800 for that. Then now I've learned how to cure that. The only thing I can't do is parking. Parking tickets can't touch. Goes to LA, and they're just a menace.
But one thing I wanted to add from what Gary said is the other partner that's at the table are the police departments.
Yes.
So we have Palo Alto PD, Sunnyvale PD, Mountain View PD, and sometimes Los Altos PD. So they are really acting as partners in this process because they want to see, they don't want to continue to give a 647F to the same person over and over and over again.
And I'll give the shout out to Palo Alto PD. They're awesome. Absolutely. Wayne Benitez, then he signs 2 people, and I think he's moving on, so they're constantly rotating. But he has 2 officers, and they have my cell, and a couple times they've called me, hey, and then we can talk about cases, and they'll call me, hey, what can we do here? Should we arrest him? Or should we cite him? Or, hey, Gary, I got, Mr. X. I just poured his beer out. I just want to let you know. Them and Sunnyvale with Sean Ahern, who's the lieutenant who got just promoted to captain. He's going to fire, which hopefully somebody takes his spot. They're really good, too, because they have really good CIT training. No, I don't know what that means, but it's the
crisis intervention.
Thank you very much. And I know that training's good. And Los Altos, there's a couple officers there that work really well. Mountain View, had problems with. They're sort of at the table. So, I'm going to call it as I see it. Palo Alto and Sunnyvale are phenomenal. And the Palo Alto guys are great. They really are. They'll come by, they'll wave. I call them, they'll stop. How you doing? And they get it. And what's really nice is they'll come to the meetings once a month, and they'll bring up actual people. What do you think we should do here? Because, again, it's not anybody who is breaking into anybody's home. It's somebody who's riding the 22 or just is drunk on the street, right here at university, or I caught him drinking, or, in the wintertime sleeping in the lot, right? And we know who they are. hey, can we just move them and working with them. So Palo Alto PD has been phenomenal.
Wonderful to
Yeah.
hear. So do any commissioners have any final questions for Gary? Thank you so much.
Sorry it took
for
so
being
long.
here. No, not at all. It was
Yep.
wonderfully informative. Thank you. And thank you so much, Chad, also for contributing to the presentation. It's great having you here. And thank you for helping Chad to be able to speak up. All right, so we'll move on to our next agenda item. There is a new initiative in Palo Alto called Our Palo Alto, and we're going to hear a presentation from Claudia Keith, who is the Chief Communications Officer for the city, and we're going to learn about this new initiative.
We can get things going here. I felt compelled to do that after being out there on the apps challenge. I just couldn't do a low-tech presentation. I'm shamed into it, right? We'll see.
Your pink cast is very fashionable.
Isn't it? I know. Well.
Function of 5 seasons.
We're going to do it one-handed? All right. There you go. I can see it, but no one else can. Is that what's happening?
Yeah. I don't know if this can.
So much for our technology.
Usually I use this one, but you don't have it. Oh, maybe this is one here. I must have used it.
This is the way I deal with technology.
Hey, how about that? Okay.
Help to connect things, huh?
Good job.
So we're connecting already.
You have to do what Amy names. Because everything hinges on Amy knowing the tables.
All right. Well, I hope I can. I'll talk and click. So, good evening, commissioners. Mayor Shepherd. Thank you for inviting me. Claudia Keith. I'm the Chief Communications Officer here at the city. I've been here just almost a year next month. So Palo Alto is new to me. I'm a transplant from Southern California. Just to kind of orient you to my background, I came from the California State University, the chancellor's office there, where I headed public affairs for about 8 or 9 years. I have a long career in public sector, environmental, transportation. So a lot of issues at the city are familiar, but yet different. So we're here tonight to talk about our Palo Alto, which is really a community, what we're calling a community conversation about our city's future. So I thought this would be much more interesting to look at in color than it is in your handout. This is really just a visual depiction of what we're calling the 3 parallel tracks of the initiative that include ideas, action, and design. And I'll go through each one of these separate in a moment, but wanted to just show you how they interrelate. So we really want to create opportunities for community dialogue in new ways and to think outside the box and how we engage and connect with the community. So our Palo Alto is really just a way to express the totality of these 3 tracks that are parallel but really intersect in many key points along the way. So it starts with ideas. And ideas generated from conversations, public dialogues, events, and other kinds of things. And these will take many different forms, and they're all still evolving. And we welcome and are looking for input and feedback and ideas. But we want to create them beyond City Hall. We want to involve and connect with neighbors and folks in our communities that don't come to a Human Relations Commission meeting. They don't come to City Hall. They may not engage with the city at all for a variety of different reasons, but they're important voices, and we need to figure out a way to hear from them and engage with them. So some of these will involve technology, new technology. We relaunched Open City Hall, which is our online civic engagement tool, with a question about the City Council's core values. And I think it was really striking, the thoughtful and deep responses that we got from about 125 people who took the time to write what was a very open-ended question and a somewhat, I would say, deep question about, what the kind of core values that they wanted to see the council make when taking actions on their behalf. And really showed, I think, the breadth of folks who really care deeply about the community and had some really wonderful ideas. We also want to have a more robust social media presence. We are starting in that direction already. We have a social media landing page, and my office in communications is going to be hiring a social media team. So I think that's one way to connect with perhaps younger folks who may be interested in the city and live in the city, but really make those connections through technology. Ultimately, what this is all geared towards is to build citizenship, civic participation. We really want to engage and connect with the community, and for the community to be really a truly collaborative partner with city government. And ultimately for their voices and their feedback and their input in all of these different manifestations, whether it's technology, a neighborhood gathering, a conversation, to be able to inform decision makers, policymakers at all levels of the city. So it really truly is a partnership. So this is a long process, and one that will continue to evolve, I think, beyond specific projects and plans. But hopefully, will be one that Palo Alto can really, I think, be known for its robust civic engagement. We have a lot of community members who care very deeply about the city. Not all of them are being heard by, I think, folks, and that might just be for a lack of different ways, time, and all the things that we all deal with in our busy lives. So one of the things we want to spark some dialogue is by bringing people together in kind of different ways. So we've got a couple of ideas. And the first one we were talking about, and these aren't on the slides, they're just sort of ideas that we're floating internally, is talking about who are we? Let's look at the demographics of Palo Alto. Who's living here? Who's going to be living here in 10 years? What is the next generation? How is that evolving? And what does that mean for the policies that we're making today? And so one of the other things we're talking about was what creates wonderful places. We thought we would meet for coffee and pastries and take an architectural tour of Palo Alto with people who want to be interested in the buildings and how did they get there. We could talk about our parks master plan by having a picnic in the park and inviting family and friends to hear about what's planned and get their input and feedback. So a lot of these are just out in the community in different and kind of fun ways. And these are all evolving. And one of the things that I know some of you have been involved in, at Mountain View, for example, the Human Relations Commission there has done a number of civility roundtables. And I think when I spoke to them, they had mentioned that some of you had been involved. If that sort of appeals to you, I'd love to talk further about how do we do that, where they're tackling a pretty tough one, I think, on the 26th of March, traffic and parking, which we know is a hot topic here, but doing it in a facilitated way with breakout groups and really an interactive dialogue with stakeholders. And my understanding is they've had some really media discussions on really difficult topics there, but everyone felt that it was really a participatory way in building citizenship and engaging that way. Yesterday, Mayor Shepard put some folks in touch with me who have a website called Made into America, and it's basically people telling their stories of their family and it's immigration and how did they get to this place. And it's really interesting. It's sort of more, it's an oral history, but on a website, but it's got some video elements, sort of the NPR StoryCorps idea. And we're talking a little bit about how would that fit into the demographics discussion. It would be great, to kind of tie all of that in. So a lot of the other things we were talking about is partnering, for example, with the Center for Deliberative Democracy at Stanford or the Institute of the Future to talk about those building creative and community dialogues and really how do we do that across a broad spectrum of folks. The last piece of sort of the ideas is we are building a micro website that will be a portal for all things Our Palo Alto, where we'll have all the ideas and the actions and the design pieces. We'll have a way to connect with us on social media. We'll have a place to sign up for an e-newsletter that we're going to produce that will have everything across the spectrum, a calendar of events. So people who are interested will be able to find it in one place in a very easy and hopefully visually appealing way. It'll take me a minute to flip and So as we continue our ideas dialogues, which as you can tell are evolving, we want to move forward with some near-term actions that we can either complete or make some good progress on in 2014. And many of these are on the council's work plans for this year, and that will enhance our quality of life and address immediate concerns that we've heard from the community. Some of these that we've already taken up, such as parking, transportation demand management, the California Avenue streetscape, which we'll have a groundbreaking for on Monday, planned community zoning reform, the Coverly lease. A lot of these really tough but meaty items that the council's been grappling with that we know the community is very concerned about and wants to see things move forward. So we're continuing with the idea spectrum, but in the meantime, we're still making progress and moving forward on a lot of these things so that people who do see progress on things that impact their daily life as well. So the final piece, as we kind of go through all of this, is the design piece. And that's really based on the good work and the foundational work of the Planning and Transportation Commission, who I spoke with this morning. We believe it's time to engage the community on the comprehensive plan in a different way. And a lot of these ideas in the community dialogues and sort of the institutionalization of this process will ultimately inform the comprehensive plan timeline and process as well. Hillary Gilliman, our new planning director, is going to be bringing the comprehensive plan and timeline to the council Monday. And a lot of the work that she'll be doing out in the community and the planning workshops will be integrated into our Palo Alto umbrella, if you will. So, done right, as you all know, the comprehensive plan is really a blueprint for Palo Alto's future. And so we're hoping all of these ideas and actions will really inform the design of this large comprehensive plan that will really dictate, land use and development issues for years to come. So our goal is to really have the ideas and conversations that are generated as part of this process. So to inform the decisions and the actions that are going to be going on, and ultimately, of course, the design of this comprehensive plan. So that's in a very short and sweet, hopefully, description is our Palo Alto. And I also have lapel pins. Our mayor's wearing one. Our Palo Alto. What would any good communications person without be some tchotchke? So I hope that all of you will wear it with pride, and I should put one on myself. And I'd be happy to take some questions. I'll just put them. Go ahead.
So, with respect to community building, Claudia, I'd like to give my perspective that probably goes a bit against the tide. I'm talking about social media versus events. We all have, usually a lot of friends on social media that we have never met, will never meet. Sometimes we even forget who they are and how we connected. And my point, it's not always very satisfactory. Personally, I find a lot more satisfaction when I establish real connections with people, either at a grocery store or at a Palo Alto event. And I like to mention that let's not get too carried away with social media. I'm not saying let's not do it. No, we have to certainly follow the trend, but personally, I would not expect that much from social media, only up to a certain level. I think that events are one of the best ways to build communities, and we have many great events here in Palo Alto, but I have to say, the city has decreased its, and I sound like a broken record because Minka has heard it several times through our work on the Palo Alto Recreation Foundation, but the city has disinvested in events for several years now. We used to have a full-time staff helping promote events. The buzzword now is PPP, public-private partnerships, and that can carry us up to a certain level. But we're dealing with many organizations based on the volunteers who have also limited means to put together large-scale events. So I just want to say, please do not forget events. And I think it would be great now that we have better times in Palo Alto if we could think about investing again in some real staff to doers, not just supervisors, doers who help produce events that will bind the community.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, and it is something we're building into the process for the community events, the speaker series, as we're out and about. And I do recognize that the social media, not everyone engages or connects with technology. I will say, though, that missing from many of our conversations at City Hall is younger people, and like younger people, most of them do connect through technology. It's the way of the world. We can reach a much broader spectrum and numbers through social media and technology than we could ever, hope to do just by sort of sending a press release out to the regular media. I mean, all the media follows us on our Twitter account, so you can really connect and reach a much broader audience. But I do understand what you're saying.
Maybe we use social media with young people to invite them to city events.
Right. Or, to ask them to have a neighborhood gathering, and we'll, get 20 of your neighbors together to talk about an issue. We'll bring a pizza and we'll talk about things. I mean, really, we're trying to be really open to ideas, and because everyone connects in different ways, some through the PTA, some through moms groups. I mean, there's a whole host depending on where you are sort of in your individual lives.
Yeah, I had a comment and questions too. First, I want to say that I work in marketing and I love your logo. Your logo is awesome.
Good. I'll tell our graphics.
Yes, love that. I wish I had designers that good, but I work with. What we see often here at the HRC is we see disenfranchised populations, and some concerns that I've had in the way about this. The way that the city communicates is that it leaves people out. It doesn't mean to, but it does. So, for example, we have a lot of seniors who are not that tech savvy, and that's just not the way to reach them. And we have a growing, aging population here. And I get concerned sometimes that the city wants to do the latest and greatest to keep up with younger people, and we're forgetting that people who actually live here for a long time and pay taxes and vote are not going to be reached that way. We also have a lot of people in the city who don't speak English as a first language. And I feel like particularly the Chinese and Russian populations and the Spanish-speaking populations are really left out a lot of times. And there are people who have strong opinions and have things they want to share, but I feel very left out of the conversation, and there's no effort on the city's part to really reach out in their own language. So those are just some concerns that I have. Even as an English speaker, and as I said, as I work in marketing, I see press releases coming out of the city's office that are almost incomprehensible in English because they're written in such sort of jargony, difficult.
Send me a note.
Not since you, Claudia. Not since you. But
I really tried my best to.
But I've seen some pretty it's difficult sometimes. You have to read between the lines and try to figure out. Even the school district does the same thing, and it's very difficult sometimes. And I think people get frustrated with that. And I'd like to see more of an effort to really communicate in plain English, bearing in mind that not everybody has a PhD from Stanford, and some of us are just busy trying to figure out what the net is. And move on. So I really applaud your efforts. I hope that you will just take some of these comments on board, and that this is our concern at the HRC, is making sure that everybody is able to participate in their language, however they're comfortable, through a medium that they're familiar with, and that we don't leave people out.
Yes, we have talked about that internally and identified, the Asian and Hispanic populations who make up a big part of the community but are not engaging with us. And we're brainstorming some ideas. When I worked at the California State University, we had a really large initiative to reach out to African American, and particularly African American males who do not, we had 430,000 students. 7,000 of those were African American males, a very small number. And so we had a really large initiative to go out into large African American churches, where we had all of the presidents of our universities talking about the importance of going to college. We had a How to Get to College poster. It was the same message, delivering it. The congregations joined with us. That's what it really takes. You really need to identify who is out in the community that can help us reach those populations. They're not going to come to City Hall. They're not going to probably engage with us on social media. Where are they gathering? Do they go to church? Are there things that they do that we can go to them to talk about? How do we connect with you? What are you comfortable in? So we're really cognizant of that, and I think we're really trying to identify some really targeted ways to reach populations that we know and have identified that we need to reach out to.
Yeah, I would say that I know that many of the Chinese residents here in the city, or Chinese American residents, are very church-based people and all know each other through various, I think they're mostly a series of Protestant evangelical churches. In fact, one of our own commissioners is a longtime member of those churches, and she's not here at this meeting, but if you ever want to connect with her to get some outreach to the Chinese American community, she does that, and she speaks fluent Mandarin and can help with those efforts. So I'll volunteer Teresa since she's not here.
That would be great.
That's what happens when you don't attend a meeting. We volunteer you. But yeah, because I'm concerned too that we see so few Asian residents participating, and I don't think it's for a lack of interest. I think it's, again, feeling a bit left out.
I would agree.
Are there other commissioners who have things? Oh, Mayor, and then you.
Yeah, I wonder if there's been more of an outreach to other communities as well, especially since you were just to get ideas for events. And I know you said you were from Southern California. What area?
From Long Beach is where the system office was.
Okay. Yes, I attended at UC Irvine.
Okay.
I was down in Orange County for about 4 or 5 years, and was just amazed at the amount of activities and events that the cities down there hosted every summer, and of course they have the weather for it. And well, I guess we do.
We do too. I have to say.
Yeah, that time of that comment with this beautiful weather, but and that was something that I really missed moving back to Palo Alto because I've been here my entire life, and having that for those 4 or 5 years while I was down there was great. It really brought out the community, members of the community from 5 years old to 90, all seemed so involved and connected with each other through these activities that many of these cities would have all the time. And I was interested if you've reached out to other communities to get their ideas, to get their input. I think especially down there, which I've noticed it the most.
I haven't reached out to Southern California just because when you start a new job in somewhere like Palo Alto, it's just enough to keep your nose above water to sort of figure out the landscape. But I think as we start to put these things together and these community meetings and organization speaker series, we've definitely looked to see what works in other cities. There is best practices. The National League of Cities has a whole best practices on civic engagement and how do you make things that are fun. You want people to come to what they're interested in, and how do you do that? So I think we're open to any and all ideas. And resources being resources, I mean, we have to sort of be realistic about what we can and cannot do. But I think one thing we're doing is to look for, out of the box ideas that people come up with that we can make happen.
Ray, you have comments also?
You just used that key term out of the box.
Out of the box.
I wanted to ask about that because it seems like a lot of what's here, which I really like, is about enlarging people's comfort zone and make a feeling of community and people working together on a variety of things. I wonder if there's any dimension of this which is to get people out of their comfort zone. When we think about where we want to be 10 or 20 years from now, I think there are a lot of people who would say, just like where you are right now, this is terrific.
Right.
Don't touch a thing. But as you heard from the previous speaker, and as we found out from our series, there are a whole lot of people here who don't have any place to be.
Right.
And we could become this really large gated community without the gates, but with all the things that go with gated communities. So a lot of people are going to have to get out of their comfort zone in order to think of Palo Alto as it should be, might be, can be, and how can it have a distinctive take on the future that preserves what can be preserved, but changes what has to be changed. So how will this initiative get people out of their comfort zone enough to begin to imagine how we really ought to be 20 years from now?
I think it will depend greatly on the topics that we choose to kind of dive deep into. Like the demographics, if you sort of look at the statistics and who's here, and who's and what's happening to the job market regionally, and what's happening to ethnicity. It is somewhat surprising, even for somebody who might be well versed in sort of what they think Palo Alto is. And I think it's really important to kind of bring those kind of sparky ideas. What is that going to look like? Let's imagine. Most people don't think about, well, what's going to happen in 10 years? Will I even be here? What's going on? So I think some of it will be topical and kind of diving deep into that. Some of it might just be an activity or meeting people that they wouldn't necessarily, sort of meet in their everyday course of life. Maybe for seniors, maybe it is trying a new technology. I mean, it really, I think, is an individual comfort zone. There are, I think, those who don't want to see things change, but change is inevitable. I mean, change is what makes Palo Alto the dynamic, wonderful, growing place that it is. Yes, it is uncomfortable for some who sort of want to keep it marked in time, and the reasons why they came here, might be different than what they see today. And that's why within this we want to build in some of those things about what people think is their Palo Alto. What brought them here? What was their story? So because there's connections, and we probably would find a lot of similarities as to why people came here, what keeps them here. Other than the schools. I mean, there's sort of those big chunks that make Palo Alto what it is. But there's a lot of different kinds of things. And being a new Palo Alton, it is, maybe I see it with somewhat of a novice lens. To me, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't look out at my window as the sun sets. Now it's a little bit later because it's daylight savings. And it's the most gorgeous, and I've seen some really pretty sunsets in Southern California, but it is the most gorgeous, just beautiful sky. And I think those are the kinds of things that people, I don't think they take for granted, but maybe it's just sort of, oh, that's just sort of part of Palo Alto. We really want to, I think, highlight what's wonderful about here, grapple and talk about some of the real challenges. As we were listening to the speaker before, I was struck because I spoke to a Wall Street Journal reporter this week who is doing a story on cities' ordinances about living in vehicles that may be impacted by a court case that's now going in the courts that you probably all know about. And he asked me a very strange question. I thought, he asked me about whether Palo Alto's homeless population was different than other cities. He had heard from somebody who was a tech worker who had lost his job and was living in his vehicle. And I thought it was such a strange question that, somehow just because we're Palo Alto and the folks that our unhoused population was somehow different than some other cities. And it was a very sort of a strange question, I think, but it almost epitomized, like, we have an unhoused population that we're trying to address with services and things like that, but somehow people think, well, just because they're in Palo Alto, somehow their stories might be different or their needs might be different. It was a very interesting perspective. And that's a little bit off topic, but it goes back to the fact that this city, on the face of it, it has a lot of affluence, a lot of very educated folks, but there are still a lot of pockets of community that aren't connected with each other. So I think it's a really good point that we're hoping to really kind of make some of those connections with maybe folks or maybe in something someone's never talked to or thought about before. And that's really just trying new things. Some things they might fail, but maybe we'll spark a dialogue or create a connection that probably would have never done that unless we had kind of launched this Our Palo Alto initiative.
Create new comfort zones.
Create new comfort zones. I mean, I agree. I think it's wonderful to get out of the comfort zone, but it depends on, your comfort zone may be here and some might be here.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions for Claudia?
Fascinating comment.
Okay, can we share your mic?
Oh, sorry, yeah. I was wondering, and one of the reasons why I wanted you to come to commission meetings is there a role for commissioners in the Our Palo Alto? Because it seems to me the ideas level here, each of our commissions have different venues and speak to a different aspect of Palo Alto. Is there any ask for a commission, or is it just all on your shoulders?
I got the same question at the Planning and Transportation Commission, like how can they be involved? And I think, which is great, and I think theirs will be more on perhaps the comprehensive plan kind of process. But I would like to ask you if you had ideas about, certainly any kind of event that we have or activity. I hope that are all involved and know what's going on, and we would welcome input. But something that, might be akin to what Mountain View's HRC is doing. It doesn't have to be a civility roundtable, but something we might do jointly together about an issue, and that we could partner, say, with Stanford and do a day about an issue. I mean, they've done, the Center for Deliberative Democracy has done things on affordable housing and some other things that you probably are aware of, but it would be wonderful to brainstorm some ideas that we could partner with that could be sort of your part of an idea or initiative.
So yeah, we met many times our colleagues from Mountain View and greatly value what they do. Some of the things that we discuss sometimes here are things like having a conference on the topic of interest to a community, maybe showing a documentary or things like that. And each time the issue for us has been essentially the lack of means and manpower to do things, because we're all volunteers already, with HRC. We don't have a budget. We don't have a.
But our Palo Alto has a budget.
Yeah. So it's where I was leading to. Maybe jointly, if you have a budget and you have staff members might have some bandwidth available, then I think we would be we could revisit this idea.
Right. I think it would be wonderful to have a topic that you want to have a community activity or a dialogue or a speaker or something that we can put together, that we can co-sponsor together and maybe bring in an entity to facilitate it. I think that would be wonderful. And so I think we should continue, brainstorming those ideas and how to do that, and then look down on the calendar and kind of start to work towards that. Because some of these things do take a while to organize, and it would make sense to, depending on sort of what you're going to be discussing, if you've got something is going to be on your agenda, say, 6 or 9 months down the road, or something you've been grappling with, we should talk about maybe there's a way to have that community conversation around that and join together. So we would welcome that.
Yeah, and I think we have a lot of ideas, so we'll probably need to revisit those. And
Absolutely.
Give you a short
Okay.
list of what we think some of the
Absolutely.
issues are.
I'd love that.
Trying to get our idea bandwidth ratio.
Yeah.
Maybe it could be a topic for next time.
All right. If there are no other questions for Claudia, thank you so much.
Thank
for
you
coming
very
here
much.
and
Appreciate
educating us
it.
about
Thank
our
you.
Palo Alto. Thank you for the awesome pins. Thank you for suggesting that topic, Mayor Shepherd.
She's going out to all the commissions.
I'm on the circuit.
Thank you, Amy, for making the technology happen.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to move on to our next agenda item, but before that, we have a oral communication. Do we do this first, Mika, or do we? It's from Catholic Charities.
Oh, I think she would have to formally open the
hearing first.
The hearing, thank you. I was
Oh, okay.
looking for the right word.
All right. So our next topic is on CDBG, and it's a report from Consuelo and Stephen, who are going to update us on the recommendations for the funding for this year, coming year.
Yes, guys.
Thank you, Susan. Good evening, Chairman and members of the HRC and Mayor Shepherd. We're here tonight to bring before you the proposed budget for CDBG for next fiscal year. As you know, the city receives funding allocation from HUD every year, and we are on a 2-year funding cycle. So our review tonight should not be too difficult, and we're just going to be looking at the applications that we funded for fiscal year 14 and make an allocation recommendation for those same agencies. I can tell you that they've all been performing very well this year, and we're working on collaborating and combining efforts amongst the different agencies. So as you know, CDBG is the principal federal program that provides grants to improve physical, economic, and social conditions primarily for persons of low and moderate income. Activities funded through CDBG must meet one of 3 national objectives. In Palo Alto, all of the projects that we fund benefit low and moderate income individuals. in order to qualify for the funding, you have to serve that demographic and that population, and everybody that we fund has that or needs that. As of today, we haven't received our allocation from HUD for fiscal year 15. As you know, with all of the issues with the federal budget, we won't know what that allocation is. We projected to know this sometime this month, and last year we ended up finding out after May. And so that caused a lot of tension amongst the different entitlement cities and amongst HUD. It created a lot of unnecessary work. So what they've asked us to do is use the national reduction in funding for planning purposes. And for federal fiscal year 14, which correlates with the city's fiscal year 15 budget, the CDBG program experienced a 2% reduction, and that's the number that we are using for planning purposes over last year's allocation. So what we're projecting that we'll be receiving next year is a total of $660,908. That consists of an entitlement grant of $457,484, $136,000 of estimated program income. And the way that our program works is in the 80s we issued a lot of loans to affordable housing providers for multi-housing rehab, and so we get money from the loan payments, and that's what's considered program income. And we're expected to receive that much money next year. And this year we are actually in excess of what we planned. We projected last year to receive about $62,000 in program income. We received more than that, and so we're using that, saving that money and planning to use it for next year. And as you're familiar with the CDBG program, there are spending caps that are placed on two of our funding categories. 15% is placed on public services, which means that regardless of what our budget is, no more than 15% can be allocated to public services. These are projects that are similar to those that we fund under his RAP. The other spending cap is based on administration, which is no more than 20% can be spent for the budget for admin costs. No cap is placed on the other three funding categories that we have. And if you look at your attachment C of your staff memo, those are just illustrating the sources that we have for next year and how the selection committee decided to make a recommendation. In summary, the 5 agencies under public service will be receiving $137 less than they did this year. Under planning and administration, we've allocated $858 more to fair housing services. That's administered through Project Sentinel. And staff is asking for an allocation of $10,000 more over the current year to cover the cost that's related to our 5-year consolidated plan. Essentially, it's a 5-year strategic plan outlining what the city proposes to do with the program over a 5-year period. And it also serves as our primary funding application to HUD. We're required to produce this every 5 years, and what we do is we collaborate with the County of Santa Clara and the different jurisdictions in the county to hire one consultant that will handle that. As part of that, we also have to update our analysis of impediments to fair housing. And so that's why the $10,000 we think will cover both of those plans that we're required to produce in order to continue to be eligible for CDBG. In our last category for economic development, the city again is asking for $150,000 for the microenterprise assistance program, and Stephen will be giving you a short update on that program after I'm done with my portion. And then for downtown streets team, we are allocating an additional $10,000 for their program over the last year. Again, the assumption is based on the 2% reduction. One of the things that HUD has asked entitlement grantees is to include contingency provisions in our action plan. Again, to reduce the workload on their end and on staff's end. So basically, we won't be able to submit our application for funding until we receive that final allocation. And the contingency plan that the selection committee chose is really in line with the recommendation that was made last year by last year's selection committee, was to honor the 2 primary programs that fund 2 of our priority needs in Palo Alto, which is the Opportunity Service Center and Palo Alto Housing Corp's Resident Support Services for our SRO facilities in downtown Palo Alto. And in order to meet that, we really feel that the option 2 that was presented to the selection committee, which basically says that regardless of what the allocation, their proportional share based on a percentage of the budget will be allocated to those 2 a higher emphasis is placed on those two. So regardless of what the allocation, for instance, with the Opportunity Services Center, they'll receive 47% of the public service dollars, regardless of what the allocation is from HUD. Naturally, we'll have to make adjustments based on that allocation and perhaps, but that's our recommendation for those public service dollars. And I'll hand it over to Steven so he can give you an update on our new pilot program.
Great. Well, it's actually hard to believe that we were here a year ago asking for a pretty substantial amount of money for a program that really wasn't fully thought out yet. And it's really to the credit of this commission and the city council, who really, I think, understood that the really basic premise of the microenterprise program is that innovation and good ideas are not really limited to one economic class in Palo Alto. The ability to come up with a good idea, the idea to start your own company or own business and really improve your situation in life is really found throughout the city in all economic classes. And so we wanted to take advantage of that in addition to all of the resources that Palo Alto has to offer to really start up a micro-enterprise program. We started off with a very meager goal of funding one person in this coming year with a micro-enterprise grant. So over the past year, Consuelo has been doing a lot of research about establishing micro-enterprise programs, finding out that there really isn't a lot of good applicable programs that we could take off the shelf and immediately apply to Palo Alto. We really had to develop our own program. Taking bits and pieces from good programs found throughout the state and the country and locally, including a program that operated in Sunnyvale, we were able to come up with a program that we think is pretty innovative and really will provide a very good benefit to our target population. Attachment D in your staff report provides an overview of what we've been doing this past year. As we've thought about this program and developed it, Consuelo and I worked together pretty closely. And at each stage, when we came up with a decision about, okay, going out and trying to find business leaders who wanted to serve on a committee to review applications or to be mentors, we were wondering, gosh, are we really going to get people who are interested in this program? And we found out that we were. In fact, we have, I believe, 10 business partners that really have jumped in very enthusiastically to not only review applications, but again, serve as mentors for the applicants that are participating within the program. In fact, it was so successful that we had these business leaders come to us asking us if we could, or they could provide money to us, to this program. And we had to turn them away to say, we're not quite there yet. Maybe one day we could grow this program so it exists outside of the city and could serve so many more people. But for our first year in the pilot program, we have a very humble goal of just funding one person and a budget that we think that we can manage in this first year. We also had questions about the number of people that would actually apply. We are targeting low-income individuals, and we were hoping that we would have at least a handful of people that could apply and ultimately be successful through the program. We found out that there were almost 26 people who applied for the program that felt that they could come up with a business idea and be eligible for a grant. Those 26 people were formed into a cohort. Through the help of Downtown Streets team and the Palo Alto Housing Corporation, we created essentially a support group for these 26 people or so to really work together almost as a team and learn from each other as individuals to help them through this process. We also provided educational opportunities such as learning how to manage your money, establishing a budget, learning how to prepare a business plan, what it takes to be a business owner. And this cohort really started to come together really as a group to support each other moving forward. And we found a very cool benefit about this program is that even though you may not make it ultimately through the entire program and get a grant, there are opportunities that this cohort can give to you as an individual so that you can learn and provide additional skills to yourself so that maybe next year you could apply to the program. So we see the cohort as really as a very important part of the program, that even though you may not get a grant, that you can still participate and learn to perhaps improve your abilities to apply for the program into the future, or just apply those skills to other parts of your life. The cohort, I think, was so successful that when we got to the next stage beyond the application process, but actually submitting your kind of business plan and proposal, I think there was about 11 people who kind of got to that next stage. And then from there, they submitted their business plans. And at least actually out of those 11 people, we found 7 that actually met the qualifications and were able to provide a business plan for this. So even though we started out very big, we got down to 7 applicants that the business community and roundtable that we've put together are going to be reviewing and ultimately making the decisions about who to fund for this year. We expect to, I think we're having our meeting next week with the business community to review those applications, and we hope to make a decision in early April. And from what we've been able to see so far, the applications and the business plans that we received are very, very good. So I don't think we'll have a problem in meeting our goal in funding that one person. But we are so excited about this program. It's something that's relatively new. There's not many other cities in California and in our area that are attempting something like this. We would like to be able to grow the program as a Palo Alto program, and then hopefully in a few years let it graduate from city staff and be able to be taken over by the community so that they can leverage additional skills and money to help even more people. So we are asking to kind of take this program from a pilot stage into a formal program, and that's a real big reason why we're asking for an additional $150,000 for the coming year, so that we can make additional improvements and help additional people in the coming year. So that's just a quick update about our MAP program, and we hope to be able to present council in the next few months or so with the grantees in a ceremony, and be able to honor those that have participated. Thank you very much.
Just also wanted to add that we're part of in developing this program, Stephen and I really talked about the importance of documenting the work that we've been doing. We provided you with a very brief summary, but we're actually working on a document that will get into the details of everything that we did and show you how we decided to make a case for this program in Palo Alto. As you all know, sitting in this commission, the need for services to low-income individuals in Palo Alto is needed, and it's not always as present as in other communities. So we just want to show you everything that we've been working on and where we got our ideas and how the program developed. And we hope to present that to council in May and provide the HRC with the follow-up, and maybe even bring one of the participants to come and speak to you. So with that, I'd like to just make staff recommendations on the CDBG budget, and we ask that you open the public hearing and take public comment, and recommend that the Finance Committee and the City Council approve the HRC's recommendations for fiscal year 2015.
I don't see the notice for public yet. Is that not the way you do it? Yeah, we took the language from the planning department.
Right, so it's identified as a business item for the HRC, and since they're not the authorizing body, it's not required to be a public hearing.
Oh.
It's a business item. It will be a public hearing for the Finance Committee and then a second public hearing for City Council.
All right, so do we have our oral communications? Okay, so I'd like to invite, is it Wanda Hale?
Yes.
From Catholic Charities to come forward. Thank you. If you could speak into the microphone.
Thanks. Yes, my name's Wanda Hale. I'm with the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. Catholic Charities holds our contract. We serve all of Santa Clara County. To remind those of you who have supported us and also those who are unfamiliar with us, we're the only program that's mandated to advocate for seniors who are in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. So we're out there in all the facilities. We see over 12,000 residents in Santa Clara County. And in the city of Palo Alto, our contract is to actually see a rather small number of residents, those who are of the low and moderate income, and the grant somewhat reflects that, because we so strongly believe that every senior and every disabled person who's in a facility deserves an advocate. And a large part of what we do is also investigate abuse. So in the city of Palo Alto, we say that we're going to see 260 of your residents, but we go to all of your 14 facilities, and so you have 1,040 beds, and we go to all of them, and we serve everyone. So what kind of abuse do we look into? Everything from to roommates that don't get along. People have lived in their own homes for years, and all of a sudden they're sharing a room with somebody they've never met or have a choice, all the way through financial abuse, through the more difficult times that we've all experienced with the economy. The whole issue of financial abuse really is present, all the way up to physical and sexual abuse as well. So, I just want to remind you that we're out there looking after the seniors who are the folks who really came into our communities in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, bought the houses, raised the kids, and now they're somewhat of the forgotten population. And I'm glad that your city still remembers them and still remembers to support an organization who's very interested in helping them. And we've partnered with, I see right here we have Silicon Valley Independent Living Center. We work with groups like that as well to help those who no longer need to be or want to be in a long-term care facility to find housing and to live on their own. So we're very interested in partnering. Our organization itself, we only have, counting myself, 3.5 staff. So remember, I told you we saw over 12,000 people in Santa Clara County. So we rely heavily upon volunteers. We have 50 volunteers who are as dedicated as a staff are. So we're out there to try to help protect people and want to thank you for your continued support. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you have questions too.
Thank you very much. All right, so now do we?
I think they're all the notes.
We're giving you a whole other book of things.
Oh, okay.
Oh, for speakers.
Oh, great. All right, so Deborah Sue Stevens from Silicon Valley Independent Living Center. Please come up and speak into the microphone. Thank you.
So again, it's on? Okay, thank you so much for doing the hard work that you're doing. We're coming up on our second year. In our first 6 months, we did not meet our goals. We applied for the CDBG funding 3 years ago, and we didn't make the cut that time. And so this last round, we came back, and the folks that were guiding us through the process remembered us, and so we made the cut this time for a very small amount of money that we're very grateful for. But it enabled us to really focus and make a commitment to Palo Alto and doing outreach up here. So basically, in January, we started doing our housing workshops and overview workshop of our organization and all the services that we provide at City Hall. And that's been somewhat successful. But what we've been doing since January is going out and reaching out to all of our partners up here. In fact, this morning, Chad was at SVILC because they've got this great program that's helping people through the process of getting a job and getting to work on time. And we've got a pilot workshop that we're doing for our housing, which is incorporating the skills of the computer and the process of how to look for a house, which is very similar to how to look for a job. So now we're coming together, including speaking with Envision, which I was speaking with a few weeks ago. So we're actually, Consuelo doesn't even know this because I was talking with her yesterday about changing the time of our workshops, but we're actually, I've got permission from our executive director to actually move the workshops out to the Opportunity Center to where it's going to be a lot more open. So Consuelo's making a note to cancel the room. So we're really working hard with the $5,770 that you guys gave us for this year to meet our goals and to get known in Palo Alto. I've also reached out to some of the community centers. We're in a lot of the nursing homes, and we leave flyers and stuff there for people that are visiting people there. We've got flyers in Sunnyvale and Mountain View, and so we're doing the best we can. We reached out to the woman that made the accessible park here, and that's right, and solicited her own connections because she didn't fit into the city's funding. She happens to have a brother-in-law that is looking for housing, so we're trying to use her connections too, which are huge in the community. So we hope that you will look at us as an ongoing partner that really wants to make this work and continue our collaborations with other nonprofits in the area. And we hope you'll support us through the second year of this grant. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Any questions? Thanks. Oh, no questions.
We may during the discussion period. Our next speaker will be Anne Marquardt. Anna.
I'm Anne Marquardt, the Executive Director of Project Sentinel, and it's a pleasure for me to be here tonight to speak about our fair housing services. We've been under contract with the city for a good number of years to provide fair housing services. We provide investigations of complaints. We conduct audits, which means we'd be looking at properties where there is no bona fide complaint, just to get a handle on the, let's say, the unreported nature of housing discrimination. We operate in, let's say, all realms of housing, rentals, sales, lending, everything, but the fact remains that 99% of the calls we get for assistance do come from low-income renters in Palo Alto. The protected categories that have been most, let's say, called upon for assistance are disability, national origin, and familial status. And in disability, that would be households that need reasonable accommodations, either a service animal, which is the brochure that I'm passing around. It's one of my favorite program brochures, and it speaks to the issue of service animals because that's one of the, let's say, areas of reasonable accommodations that housing providers have the, I'd say, greatest problem in relating to. They think that Mrs. Smith, who's in a no-pet building, Mrs. Smith has been sneaking her cat in for a long time, and they finally give Mrs. Smith a notice that either she has to leave or her cat has to leave, and Mrs. Smith then renders a doctor's note for the cat as an emotional support cat. And in all reality, Mrs. Smith does have some sort of disability that will benefit from the assistance of that animal, but yet the housing provider thinks it's just a ruse, and we can come in and help bridge the gap between those parties and hopefully get resolution most of the time. We've actually been able to resolve, I'm going to say, most of the complaints in Palo Alto over the past couple of years with conciliation. If a case cannot be resolved with conciliation, though, we do refer it on for further enforcement action, either through HUD or the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing or a private attorney. And we've been leaning more towards HUD because that takes, let's say, less money on everybody's part when the complaints are processed that way. Besides disability, I think I mentioned familial status and national origin, and the characteristics of those cases are sometimes hostile environments where you'll have overly restrictive rules of conduct for families with children. And in one case we have, not in Palo Alto, it's a case where the manager circulated a rule that says no children will be outside the unit, period, at all. And one parent went to the manager holding the small child's hand saying, I have no problem with adult supervision of children, but surely you don't mean that we have to stay in our unit all the time, and so it's a jail, and the manager said, you've got it right. So, by the way, that case is with the Department of Justice right now. So these cases, for the most part, we can resolve. That particular case I just cited is one of the extremes. Most of the time, the owners and managers will say, oh, we didn't know that would be a policy or a practice that would have a discriminatory impact. So anyway, we deal with those. This last year, we have been dealing with more homeowner associations in Palo Alto, which is kind of a surprise. But there they'll have rules that will be discriminatory against families with children, rules overly restrictive on conduct, or possibly an overly restrictive occupancy policy. Let me just tell you about one other quick case that we're dealing with. We have a case that we have filed a lawsuit against Travelers Insurance because they will not write policies for property owners that have a significant number of tenants with the Section 8 program. And while owners are not required, housing providers are not required to accept Section 8 applicants, we believe it is discriminatory on an insurance agency's policy and practice to deny coverage to owners that do rent to households with Section 8, because the majority of those Section 8 certificate holders will be people of protected status, ethnic and racial minorities, people with disabilities, families with children. So, okay, and we also do an active outreach to property owners in Palo Alto and provide educational training workshops for them every year. Okay.
Thank you. Sure. I don't think you can ask questions right now.
No,
you can't.
Can't ask for information.
Molly Stump had told me that the HRC could because we're not making binding decisions. I don't want to do anything that affects federal regulation.
We generally haven't been allowed to take questions at this whenever we hear from our providers.
Can you go maybe ask offline?
I'll be happy to
stay later. Okay, thank you so much. All right, yeah, we don't want the FBI version in here. Okay, and our next speaker will be Adriana Caldera.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Adriana Caldera, and I'm with the YWCA Silicon Valley. I'm the director of their domestic violence department. I want to start by saying thank you so much for your continued support over the years. It really means a lot to us to be able to continue to provide domestic violence services to the city of Palo Alto. Just to give you a background on the services that we provide, we operate a toll-free 24-hour crisis line where we're providing crisis counseling and safety planning. We do have advocates who are bilingual, English, Spanish. We have staff who are also who speak Mandarin, Russian, and soon to be Farsi in 2 weeks when we get a new staff member on board. So we do really try to make an effort to be able to provide services to all members of our diverse community. We also operate an emergency shelter that is in a confidential location. We're able to provide up to 20 individuals with emergency shelter on a given night. Most nights we operate at full capacity. This past year, our monthly shelter utilization rate was at 102%. So it's very rare when we have a space that's open, and it usually goes within a matter of less than a few hours. We also provide comprehensive counseling and therapy services. So we have licensed therapists on staff who are able to help with the process of healing for survivors and families that come through our doors. We also provide legal advocacy where we are working directly with the court systems. Some of the courts that were mentioned earlier today in San Jose, we have specific advocates who are there every day of the week. We also do safety planning and education and case management services for clients that come through our program. This past year for the city of Palo Alto, we provided 61 residents with crisis counseling through our 24-hour hotline. We were able to serve 40 residents with support services, and we were able to provide emergency shelter to 2 residents with over 105 bed nights for those 2 individuals. We also maintain, and we're very happy about this, to have a wonderful partnership with the Palo Alto Police Department. We have an advocate who is housed on site. The police department provides in-kind space for our advocate to be there, and they're able to receive redacted police reports for domestic violence incidents that happen within city limits. And then our advocate is able to connect with the survivors to be able to get them more connected with our services or other community services that they may be in need of. So I just want to be able to thank you all on behalf of the staff and the clients that we serve. We're truly appreciative for your continued support.
Thank you very much. All right, and I think we have one more speaker, which is Chad from Downtown Streets team. And can someone help Chad out with that?
I am Chad with Downtown Streets team. I'm the director of services, which includes case management and employment services for our services here in Palo Alto, but across Santa Clara County as well. And I just want to apologize up front that if I do leave early, I'm going to catch the Caltrain at 9:30. So I'm going to be realistic about that. Thank you to the commission and especially to our supporters for the city of Palo Alto. They've been incredibly supportive this year and since 2005, just for all different kind of services that we have. Particularly, I did want to highlight this year, or this, I guess we're halfway, a little over halfway this year so far. The MAP program that Consuelo was talking about has been really exciting. It has provided an opportunity and some resources to folks who wouldn't have it otherwise. I wanted to highlight one individual. I'm just going to go ahead and use first names because that's just how we do things. Walter, who was one of the applicants who was able to make it to the next stage, he is super excited because he's proposing to work with the city of Palo Alto for an umpiring program for the Little Leagues. And it's something that's just been a passion of his whole life, and so the idea made sense. And it seems to make sense because it could be a supplemental service to the city of Palo Alto so that they don't have to do it directly themselves. So that's pretty exciting. And then kind of in the background, just to tell a little bit more about how our whole program works, is that Walter has been a team member for quite some time. He's actually a green shirt supervisor, which means he peer supervises other newer members of the team. And then he's also been able to be housed through one of our, what they call TBRA housing subsidy programs, which is kind of a temporary step-up type subsidy where he'll be able to take over the rent eventually himself. So not just, just kind of like the array of services that are available and how we help people is really kind of, it's complicated, but it takes like a village and it takes a lot of different things, and the city of Palo Alto has been very supportive in that regard. Also, our employment services, I've been trying to take an active approach to reach out to other partners and CDBOs, for example, the Silicon Valley Independent Living Center, just because we have this great structure now of employment services, employment development specialists, and we have an incentive, employer incentive fund to where we can actually work with employers and provide them financial incentive to hire our team members and folks who maybe have like a criminal background or gaps in their employment to where they otherwise would be looked over. And that's coming directly from the CDBG funding. And then also in a training fund. So we're able to put people into vocational trainings. We have several people in CNA trainings right now, for example, and culinary certificates so that they can actually get into a position that would be like a living wage type job. So we're really excited about those, and those are brand new. And just all along the way, we're always able to come up with new ideas and be supported by the CDBG funding. So we very much appreciate that, and thanks for having us.
Thank you very much for being with us tonight, Chad, and participating so much in our meeting. Really appreciate it. All right, so now we are going to discuss the recommended allocations. I just wanted to explain just really quickly for the sake of my commissioners. Commissioner Moran and myself participated on the selection committee this year. And it was a bit financially complicated, and math is not my thing. But Consuelo had explained to us that because of the federal 2% cut and because of the mandatory caps, was actually a small amount of money that we had to deal with. And there were sort of only so many ways we could slice the pie. So what it kind of came down to was there were some things going on that really needed to be funded. For example, this 5-year report that's being done, there really needs to be an outside consultant hired. So we really do need extra money in the administration category to cover that expense. And then in terms of allocating across all the other agencies, and we've heard from several representatives, these are all such worthy causes and we fully support you. We have had a feeling on the HRC, which Commissioner Moran and I think still agree with, that food and shelter have got to be prioritized, because if people are hungry and unhoused, it's hard to get them into other types of services. So that is why we went with option 2, which was to make sure that Palo Alto Housing Corp and Envision, who's the only provider that's really delivering hot meals to unhoused and low-income families and individuals, still got that bit of priority. Not to cast any shade on any other group, because we do support you. It is our feeling that those two things really needed to make sure that they were prioritized. So that was kind of the way things shook out. But we are very open to hearing what the rest of you have to say about the funding recommendations, and hopefully we'll get to a conclusion for Consuelo. Claude, go ahead.
So I'm going to support the entire recommendation from the committee except for Catholic Charities. And last year I spoke at length on this topic, and this year I promise I will be very brief. I also fully expect that I'll be dissenting minority, probably even the lone dissenter. So again, I just want for the record to explain agree what was not realized. The reason essentially, I'll summarize it, it's discrimination against gays and lesbians, and also discrimination against women. And I also object about the use of public money to fuel more discrimination. And I would recommend that you go on the internet and do a search on, very simple search, Catholic Charities gay, and you get an earful of things. And do the same search on Catholic Charities single sex, you get another earful of things, complaints against Catholic Charities all over across the country for discrimination, blatant discrimination against gay and lesbians. Now, I'll be very clear, there is no shred of evidence that Catholic Charities is discriminating against gay and lesbians in Santa Clara County. That being said, I think we should still withdraw our support, because there are plenty of opportunities to speak up against this discrimination within their network, and they never did. And I want to contrast that with the very courageous attitude that the Boy Scouts had in Palo Alto. They spoke up, they said, we are not going to discriminate against gays here in Palo Alto. They took risk, they were courageous. Catholic Charities has not done that. Let me also mention that compared to last year, there is another change in California. It's the fact that we have gay marriage now. It's legal in California. And that will put Catholic Charities in Santa Clara County sooner or later. It's unavoidable, in an awkward position, because they'll have probably to do what they did in Washington, D.C., when marriage was authorized a bit sooner. They decided they would not cover spouses of new employees anymore. Why did they do that? Because they didn't want to take the risk of covering one single gay person. So it's going to come here, and I wonder what you'll do at that time. The second reason is, it's obvious, it's very unfortunate, I'm very sad about it, but we have a war on women in our country, and Catholic Charities is an active participant. Whenever they are allowed, they discriminate against women by denying contraception. Catholic Charities is in the process of suing the federal government on the Affordable Care Act, because even though they would not have to pay for contraception, they still take the extreme position of denying contraception. And again, in Santa Clara County, they are part of this nationwide organization. They are not speaking up. By not speaking up, when you see something happening if you don't speak up, I think it's your duty when you see discrimination. You have to speak up. If you don't, you're complicit. So I think we should send a message, through Santa Clara County that Palo Alto doesn't support discrimination against gay and lesbians, especially when it's so blatant and so done so willingly. I think that we don't support also discrimination against women. And I'll conclude by saying, here on the HRC, it's our role, our duty, our mission to stand up against discrimination. Because if not us, who else? That being said, I rest my case.
Very well said. Thank you, Claude. And do we have some other commissioners who have comments or questions either on what Claude said or on any of the funding recommendations for CDBG?
I think I will say something.
Speak into your microphone.
If I may, my fear, my anxiety in this situation is that the evidence or the information that Commissioner Ezron has is anecdotal, and that it would take more of a study of relative groups, Catholic charities and perhaps others first, to ensure that we're not singling out in a reverse form of discrimination one group that happens to have an affiliation with a religious background, perhaps. But we're not even clear on that in our county. And let me tell you why. Another reason I would probably want more evidence before I would ever suggest that Catholic charities in our county should not be supported, besides the fact that I don't think we have enough evidence. A computer review is not enough. We could come up with all sorts of cases that have to do with the entire nation regarding many different groups, starting with the Boy Scouts. But the other reason is that, for example, anecdotally, I work in the courts. I'm an attorney who works in the courts of Santa Clara County, and Catholic charities enormously helps small children. They have a program called Young Fives, I believe, or they support it in the courts. And that enormously helps women, fantastically helps families with small children under the age of 7. And so I would want to be very careful about how I singled out that group. So, in short, I would not be supportive of Commissioner Ezron's motion.
Anyone else have a question or comment? Well, I'll say that I always find myself torn when Commissioner Ezron brings up these issues because I think they're really valid issues, and I think we do need to speak up whenever we see discrimination. At the same time, I think it's difficult to, I think, how does the Bible say it, to visit the sins of the father upon the son, so to speak. The larger Catholic Church maybe has some political views that we don't all share, but this particular local organization does a tremendous amount of good. We did question them last year about whether they have any issues helping gay and lesbian clients who are elders. They do not. They do, in fact, work with that population and have no issues with it. As Commissioner Ezron mentioned, there's no evidence that there is any discrimination locally here in Santa Clara County. And to me, the good here outweighs even these very legitimate concerns. And so I would be inclined to go ahead and support the recommended allocation to Catholic charities because it's a much needed program. And the issue of elder abuse is real and is happening. And the discrimination is sort of on a different level at a national stage. And I will just say that as a woman who's been discriminated against in my life, I do take it seriously, but if we stopped and protested every time, I think every woman in the room might secretly agree with me, we would never do anything because we would spend our whole lives protesting and complaining. I mean, there's a point where we've all inherited certain institutional mechanisms, and we sort of have to fight and keep going at the same time. So I think this is one of these situations where we need to go with the greater good. So that's my feeling. Does anyone else want to chime in or have anything else they want to say?
Very enlightening conversation.
It is a very enlightening conversation.
I have a totally different question.
Oh, sure.
It's regarding the Micro Enterprise Fund. It's a great initiative. I'm just curious, of your 150,000 budget, how much of it do you expect it to be in actual grants to people versus administration?
We placed a cap going into this project that no more than 25% of the budget be spent on administrative cost. the 7 applications that we've received, the total amount requested is $37,000. So if we fund all of them and all of their requests are eligible expenditures, then we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $37,000 in that allocation. But we've also been spending money on training, on technical assistance, and our idea or our goal is that if it's 7 individuals that we end up funding, that we would also help them with additional technical assistance that's not part of their grant.
And I also want to say I was very excited when you described that you have other people who might want to contribute in the future. I think you guys took a leadership and started something that hopefully will grow and become big and will benefit our entire community.
That's probably been one of the most exciting aspects, is meeting the individuals, hearing their story, and then connecting them to services that they weren't aware were existing in the county.
Yeah, I would like to second what Commissioner Ezrin said. I think that many times here at the HRC, the issues that come before us are complex and diverse, and yet often they boil down to questions of poverty, lack of resources, people sort of being born into situations and circumstances that are very difficult. And despite the myth of social mobility here in America, people tend to end up where they started. It can be very difficult to break those cycles. So a program like this really digs at the roots of those issues, that lack of opportunity, lack of resources, lack of education, lack of training, and to really, really get to that level and lift someone up is amazing to see. And so I'm very supportive of that as well. All right. So if no one else is can you get that?
Oh, yeah. This is, you're calling it micro investment, and I think I sent you an email. My daughter does do this professionally, and I don't know if you looked at Pacific Community Ventures. They're going to be doing their program next month on impact investment. So I certainly hope they have been in the cities around the state of California for over 15 years and have all gone up to G8 summits and such, showing this model. So I certainly hope that it looks like you know about them. So yeah, she's going to go on to grad school to do social entrepreneurship, but this is her particular expertise at that particular organization. So a lot of Palo Altans have supported that organization already.
Okay, yet another contact.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We do have that. We met with them twice, and one of the things that we found is that the demographic that they serve is a little bit more developed, and they have their ideas. So what we were hoping is, out of the 7 individuals that applied for funding, maybe one of them could continue on and receive the services.
Okay. Yeah, well, just for fun. She was the CalPERS analyst.
Oh, great.
So, and got them back on the social, but that was another thing for me to do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, I hear a sidebar discussion. Does Ray have to recuse himself because of envision?
Whether he does or not, he will.
Okay.
Just in case. Because
No, I want to.
But if Ray has to recuse himself, do we still have a quorum?
We do have a. Okay, but for something past or it won't pass because we need 4.
Okay.
So I want to be really clear that it's my understanding that would be needed because Ray is on the executive contracts with
Envision.
So
can I maybe the mayor or the planning staff could give us a little more feedback on that, but sure. What we did last year is that we took funding recommendations by funding category. So I believe that Commissioner Bacchetti voted on planning and admin, economic development, but did not vote on the public services. And I also wanted to point out that this is a 2-year funding cycle, and you're not. Your role this evening is not to identify whether you want to fund the agency or not, because that vote was decided last year. The discussion tonight is how much to fund the individual agencies. So you cannot decide to not fund one of the agencies because that decision was formulated last year as a 2-year funding cycle. So the discussion for tonight is just to determine how much you want to allocate to the individual agencies.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. That's well. Yes, she's so sharp. All right, well then, do I have a motion to approve the funding categories as proposed? Oh, yes, that's right.
Thank you, Minka.
All right. So do I have a proposal for the first, which is public services? All right, any second? All right, all in favor? Okay, great.
Oh, yes.
He has to abstain because he's.
You know what? I'm going to be a good guy. Sorry to. I don't want to have a repeat of what happened last year. Because if I vote no, it's not going to pass. Am I correct?
Correct. And
Okay.
we can't take them out anyway.
Okay. So, in the spirit of goodwill, provided that the record, the minutes clearly reflect that I'm completely against funding Catholic charities for the reason I explained, and that I'm voting only because I want this whole thing to move forward and I don't want to be an obstacle. I like the minutes to explain why I'm voting for it.
Reflect your viewpoint. All right, in that case, I'll call for a vote on the public services portion of the funding recommendation. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And abstained? One. Commissioner. All right, do I have a motion to approve the planning and administration portion of the funding?
So moved.
Okay, and second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Abstain or opposed? No one? And finally, the economic development portion, a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, and Commissioner Moore, do you second? And all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? All right, we did it. I hope you make your train, Chad.
Thank you.
Just wanted to take the time to thank the HRC for listening to all of our HUD regulations that we're required to provide you with. And thank you again for supporting our microenterprise assistance
We
program.
definitely do, and thank you very much for being here tonight and explaining everything to the commission.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you, Commissioner Ezrin, too, for your team spirit. All right. All right, so our next item on the agenda is the approval of the new mediators, well, not the new mediators, but the approval of mediators who are re-upping for a second term at the Palo Alto Mediation Program. And our HRC liaison to the Palo Alto Mediation Program is Commissioner Greer Stone. And PAMP was here last time, but they hadn't publicly noticed that they needed us to vote and hadn't provided us bios on the not commissioners, but on the mediators they wanted us to approve. So we basically said, we got to do this properly. So now we noticed it on our agenda. They did provide bios in our packets. And now, Commissioner Stone, did you want to kind of introduce the topic, or do you have anything to add?
No, I think you covered it perfectly. They all got the 6 mediators who are asked to be renewed. We all have their bios. So I just urge the commission to unanimously renew all mediators.
Yeah, I did want to say that I've worked with PAMP. I was the previous liaison. I know pretty much everyone on the list, I think, except I'm not sure if I've met Marina, who's the first one listed. I know everyone else, and the new mediator is, of course, our own Martin Eichner from Project Sentinel, who most of us know very, very well. So he's new but not new. And Richard Bloomfield I also know, and he's a wonderful mediator, but he's moving to emeritus status. So I don't see any red flags myself, being personally acquainted with these folks. They're very dedicated to the program. They take this work very, very seriously. It's wonderful service to the city. So unless anyone has a question or a comment, do I hear a motion to approve the PAMP mediators?
I'll make the motion to approve this whole list of mediators.
All right, does anyone second? All right, and so all in favor, aye? Aye. Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, so we have approved the mediators, and thank you very much, and thank you, Greer, for liaising with them. I'm never sure if that's really a verb, but I'm going to make it one. Okay. All right, so the next item is the election of the chair and the vice chair of the HRC for the next term. So I feel a little odd about this one because I'm currently serving as chair. Yes?
I'd love to know what the process is. People volunteer, or can we volunteer? I mean, how do you go about it?
Well, that's what we have to discuss, definitely. Yeah, definitely have to discuss. So it's common that the vice chair kind of often rolls into the chair role as the chair goes off and does other things. This year, leadership, which is Commissioner Bicchetti and myself, discussed it, and we have a proposal, which is that we would continue in our current roles for one more year. The reason is that we're sort of in the middle of a bunch of stuff, and we sort of want to make sure these projects get driven to completion. So we're willing to consider that, but of course it's up to the will of our fellow commissioners. Can you stand us for another year? Does someone else want to, offer, and, and we're very willing to hear what you have to say. Yes, Commissioner Moore?
Does anybody else do this? Move Commissioner continue the chair and Commissioner continue the vice.
Well, that's so kind of you.
Can we elect you for life? No.
Our lives would be very short because of all the meetings we have to go to. Well, we have, considered whether fellow commissioners might want to step into the roles. We think some of you might be a bit new still on the commission and still in a learning mode. Some people are having either family issues or traveling a great deal and may not have the availability to be here. Claude is unfortunately rolling off of the commission. He's decided not to re-up. So it's kind of who's available, who's experienced, and it seemed like it might be smoothest if we stayed.
Right. So you would open it up for nominations. So however you want to work.
Okay.
That.
So does anyone want to nominate anybody for either the chair or the vice chair role? I think Dion. So are you nominating both of us?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone want to second her?
I'll second.
All right. And so
I think.
What? I'm sorry. Oh. Okay.
I have the rules in front of me. The chair asks the nominated person if they are willing to accept the nominations. Commissioners continue to nominate additional candidates. With each nomination, the chair asks the person if they are willing to serve. When there are no further nominations, the chair asks for a motion to close the nominations. The motion is seconded. The commission votes verbally to close the nominations, and then you vote.
Okay. So that would mean I'd have to have a Gollum-like conversation with myself about whether I want to serve, but I'll say yes. And Commissioner Bicchetti, are you willing to? Yes. Okay. Is there anyone else who wants to propose a nomination at all for either position?
Very stimulating, very good.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So I just want to make sure I'm not closing off any avenues. Does anyone else want to propose another nominee? That's fine.
I'd like to say it's a great idea. I'll support it. You guys did a great job.
Thank you. All right, so can I go ahead and call for a vote?
Close the nominations.
So I'll close the nominations. And all in favor of myself and Commissioner Bicchetti continuing on as chair and vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? All right, then I think we're back in business.
Yeah.
All right.
You're not even changing chairs.
We're not. Well, thank you very much for your faith in both Ray and me. We do try hard. We do our best. And we're excited to see some of these projects through that we've been working on. All right, so now we'll move on to item 6, reports from officials. Are there any commissioner reports?
Yes.
Commissioner Ezrin? Oh, and then Claude, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I want to report on 2 things. Daryl Savage invited me to attend the FBI Citizens Academy Alumni Association meeting, and it was a very exciting meeting on cybercrime, and so there were a couple of speakers, one from the FBI and also our district attorney, Jeff Rosen. And I'd like to encourage you, if you have never heard Jeff Rosen speak, go, because he's a great stand-up comic as well. He's a wonderful speaker, extremely interesting, really
DA?
on top of things, a DA, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And he's also funny. So that was a great meeting. Second thing, we had also Commissioner Moran, Savage, and myself. We had our quarterly meeting with Police Chief Burns. And it was first a great opportunity to congratulate him on his well-deserved award. He's a tall tree, and he's going to receive his award very soon. And we discussed several issues. Chief Burns informed us that the police department can indeed communicate in many languages. They have quite a few officers with a variety of language skills, and is going to make a list of all these languages. The Palo Alto Police Department website will soon be available in a Spanish version, and they are looking into Mandarin as well. We also learned that every police car is now equipped with 5 cameras. I knew there was one before, but now it's like 5, so they can capture audio, video, and make sure they have good visibility on every single incident. In fact, they record permanently, and when they stop somebody, they can go back like 30 seconds before the incident even started. What's that?
You said in HD.
Oh, okay.
Be careful what you do.
We talk about tasers also, because I think there was a recent auditor report that talk about an incident in 2012. We share some of the ideas about, in many ways, maybe it's a personal opinion more than anything else, tasers do tend to save lives, because if the other alternative is using a lethal weapon, this is a much worse situation. So I think they are looking into, because each time they use a taser, there's a bunch of criticism coming in, and it might be warranted in some cases, but in some cases, we should not forget the message that it's one more tool that they have at their disposal. We asked also about staffing, because we knew they had a substantial shortage of officers, and they said that 5 new officers just graduated from the police academy, so the situation is getting better and better. Finally, he said that there will be more community outreach meeting. They are going to, in a few months, restart the Citizens Community Advisory Group that some of us were part of. And he also shared with us that residential burglaries are way, way down in Palo Alto, but on the other hand, auto burglaries are way up. Especially on El Camino Real with all the restaurants, and especially with car rentals.
And people leaving their laptops.
People are looking for laptops and iPhones. So, in a nutshell, that's my report.
Park your car in your living room.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much for that report, Commissioner Ezrin. And I know I'd be interested in learning more about the Citizens Advisory Group when it's reignited or reactivated. That's something I've never had a chance to participate in. Commissioner Bacchetti, I believe you had a report also?
Yes, I've got 2 reports. One is on the housing panel, which is the new group that is one aspect of the housing element in the comprehensive plan. It's a different kind of element from others in that requires state approval. And so there is a citizen panel working to help the staff work that out. This first meeting was an orientation meeting. So a PowerPoint presentation of issues, got into some early discussion about zoning issues, low-income housing, the ABAG requirements, Association of Bay Area Government, which requires Palo Alto to identify a certain number of sites for dwelling units. And at the next meeting, we're going to get into the substance of some of the discussion of site selection and definition as to how to deal with what called the regional housing needs application, which is another term for what ABAG expects us to do. And Palo Alto has a regional housing needs application of 1,988 units. So this panel to help the staff think about how that going to work. The second group that I represent, HRC on, is the Homeless Services Task Force. Our 3rd meeting this week, working against the lengthy agenda of short and long-term goals. We spent most of this discussion talking about how to get ready for the election season so that we can put before the public, take advantage of the public engagement in election, put before the public information about homelessness, and so work on messaging, to raise awareness of homeless issues, and push for commitment from candidates
anyone else have a commissioner report? Commissioner Stone?
Yeah, on Monday, I attended the Palo Alto Youth Council's think tank for getting a youth-friendly business plan in order. It actually be the first ever youth business plan in the city's history. And so it was great. Palo Alto Youth Council was there, about 10 high school students, done, and Pally, along with business leaders in the community. Councilman Mark Berman was there, and we just had a great conversation for about an hour and a half about discussing the best ways that we can get the business community involved in being more, say, I guess, less confrontational with the youth issues like backpack policy, CPS, and or just treating youth with more respect when they enter businesses, making them feel like they're a wanted part of the community, as well as hiring more youth or discounts, or, issues like that. So they're coming up with an idea that they would maybe identify a certain amount of businesses each year, nominate one as the most friendly business in town, and then hopefully come up with some sort of decal sticker so that businesses in the windows, people know that they support the youth, the friendly youth, and it's a place. So it was a very impressive meeting. These high school students just incredible. So,
Anyone else have a commissioner report? I'll just share that I've scheduled a ride-along with a police officer for later this month, so I will have hopefully an interesting report next, and hopefully I'll survive.
It's quite an experience.
And get to see everything that happens real time, live and in person. All right, so let's move on. Are there any council buddy reports? All right, and Mayor Shepherd, do you have a council liaison report or anything you want us to update us on?
What is it? What interest?
Oh, turn it
on at council.
There are a lot of issues that I think that the council's grappling with at the moment. I don't know.
Well, I could just list them if you want me to, but I just was trying to figure out which part of them were of particular interest.
I have to be honest, I'm so tired, but I'm really focused on the bike boulevard, so I don't know that that's really for the HRC. It's just that I'm fanatically interested in the bike boulevards. And I think we're all interested, well, I know I'm interested in the hotel tax situation, because I'm feeling like I would love to see some of that money end up in the hands of our local nonprofits, and I'm just wondering if there's a mechanism just for us to start working with council on maybe using some of that hotel tax money for some of that work that's been sort of underfunded for a long time.
Okay, well, let's start there then. We had a subcommittee for infrastructure, and we have, as Ray Pichetti knows, he was part of our Blue Ribbon Task Force and knows more about it than I do, but we've got in large chunks about $40 million worth of catch-up, and we've been throwing all of our budget excesses into that. And we're making some good strides because we're starting to see resources coming back. They've exceeded the 2008 revenues and are starting to maybe, I keep asking, are we where we should be if we had COLs, and stuff since the Great Recession? So the infrastructure committee came out with a revenue measure in order to support the infrastructure considerations. So this is primarily expected to go towards these efforts because $200 million worth of backlog of capital improvement infrastructure, which includes the public safety building. Even though we have strategic strategies as to how to fund each of them, this particular initiative will be illustrated for spending not on anything except for what's been considered in committee, which will, I think that there is the bike boulevards. There's a number of things that did poll well. And we do not have public, funding for nonprofits in part of the polling. So I'm imagining you can work with council, but not necessarily with a revenue measure, because this has been our focus. It's been our focus, I want to say, for 3 years, ever since we put the committee together, 4 years. On Monday night, Hillary's going to come and go through the new plan that we have for our comprehensive plan, which has gotten sort of stalled out. For a variety of reasons, Plan and Transportation had some turnover, and we've had turnover of main staff. And so this is the big vision statement that we have that the R Palo Alto is helping us shape ourselves around in order to take a look at what we want to put in for values and that type of thing for vision statements in the plan, in addition to how we want to zone for items. So she's going to be coming forward with that. We hope to hit the EIR. Once we figure everything out with all the 7 elements of our comprehensive plan, then it will go into the EIR. And then next year we'll be spending all the time looking at what the EIR has to say about mitigations to all of the zoning that we've incorporated in. You know, if it gets built, when it gets built, what do you need to do in order to support growth? Which there is a lot of capacity for growth right now, just because things have been historically zoned for much more than what we have along the El Camino Real. Just itself, it can go up to 35 feet, if not 50 feet in different areas where there's just single story, you know, businesses now. So, you know, we have gotten through the triple play of residential parking permits. We've told staff to go back and draft that for implementation. Transit demand management, we've sent them out to come up with techniques for getting people to negotiate with people to just get out of their cars and save us the need of having to build anything, you know, any more garages. And so that will all be sort of innovative and worker-oriented, commute-oriented, not necessarily, and, you know, with an amenity of shuttles that maybe residences will use as well. And then the final part that we have along those lines is expanding our parking opportunities. So there's been actually a lot of community engagement at any point in time on the 7th floor up in the city manager's office. I can see a whole bunch of community members that I usually see sitting out in the council chambers in a meeting, going through things there. I think that staff is making a specific effort to be personable and to remember, you know, that's how we're going to kind of spin ourselves out of some of this buildup. We do, you know, we can claim to have helped to cause parts of the problems based on some of our incentives for keeping historic, you know, buildings historic and incentivizing selling off any extra square footage they could build out on their property to let other people build it out without having to provide for parking. All of those have been eliminated, so when applications come forward, they are technically truly parked. But we have one problem, and that is the knowledge economy is just packing everybody in around conference room tables without cubicles and offices and such. And so we do know that our formula for understanding how many parking spots we need for per square foot of workspace is not probably accurate anymore. That will be evaluated after we get data back from the study that we're doing for that got triggered where at 225,000 square feet of build out from 1986, that triggered a study to collect data on all of the unintended consequences of having more office space downtown with a 10% build out from the 2086 of 350,000 square feet. That's the cap that we have before we can accept new applications technically. So there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot on the plate. We're taking up some possible other ballot initiatives, which could be charter changes to kind of take a look at some of the things we've noticed as, you know, blocking maybe some of the good governance we'd like to have, which would be possibly reducing council to 7 members, hopefully definitely reorganizing in December and not January, so we don't have a gap with non-legal council members. If they roll off of council, they're done at the end of December, but they still pop up to go through reorganization in January. And so most of the other cities do it in December. Everybody knows who their mayor and vice mayor is, and then they can get going on the appointment process and such, so over the holidays. So and then the final one is the consideration of whether or not we should expand the term limits that we have, because we do see that being possibly one of the causal experiences as to why we're not getting onto some of the regional committees that we think are heavily influencing some of our, unfunded mandates that Palo Alto has. Usually they go to cities that don't have term limits, and they very often do not come from the peninsula, because most of the peninsula and the larger cities have term limits. So it's that balancing of how do you get people to want to run for city council, and yet at the same time being able to have Palo Alto's interests elevated to the regional levels when they're making some of the big decisions, and they're being made by communities that are very far from the metropolitan area in the Bay Area. So that's, there's a lot going on. We have, we have a long work plan. So
I did want to mention, my subcommittee is working on a supplemental human needs assessment related to HISRAP agencies.
Yeah.
And we are reviewing now the survey responses, and transportation is an issue, comes up again and again and again for many populations. So just to give you a heads up, that may be something.
Heads up, we've already taken it up. So no, we've got, we're going out for RFPs on more shuttles. We're doing a shuttle for California Avenue, which is getting dug up right now as we speak. It is going to go down to dirt because we're also going to do the water main and not dig up the streets in 2 years to do the water main. We thought that we would just mess with everybody down there all at the same time. So staff is being very careful to be as strategic as possible with staging in certain areas and adding parking spaces, but also doing a shuttle that will loop through the research park and come down to California Avenue so that people don't have to drive, down for lunch.
But I think some of the issues that we're seeing in the supplemental needs assessment are, students whose parents work and who desperately need to be connected with, say, homework help or tutors. They can't get to the resources they need. Seniors cannot get to, have a need at some places that they need to get to. So it's good that the shuttles are focusing somewhat on the business community, and I understand that need, especially.
Well, one of them is featured to actually go past my house on El Camino. So it would, and then to downtown and connect the two downtowns, the California Avenue and down to University Avenue. So in addition to possibly even doing a Fremont BART shuttle. So anything to help us mobilize better, and that's kind of our focus. But we also do hear about that, and probably, we actually are very ambitious with our shuttle program because we do think that is something that will become an amenity to Palo Alto. But also help relieve us from being able to nimbly get people out of the train stations or the bus stations and off to where they need to be without having to park.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome idea.
Yeah.
All right.
Could we by any chance collaborate with some of the companies that know very well have their own bus networks?
Claude, all of that is in the RFP. So yeah, that's all. That's exactly what that is about.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor Shepherd.
We asked us what we want to hear about.
Yeah.
One of the things we want to hear about is how can we be useful to the council.
Well, that's why I took this liaison role to see kind of how that could be taken up a little bit. I think doing HISRAP and CBDG is really critical and important because you really do vet instead of just going to finance committee, having staff go to finance committee and then to council. And I think that work is critical. I think you did the human needs assessment that you did. Are you updating that every other year? Yeah, I think that really is, and I know I mentioned it before, it would be useful just to see who's on lunch programs at the schools, just kind of getting that type of picture and snapshot of Palo Alto that we don't usually see. If there's a way, personally, if you could somehow identify also who the Stanford students are, because they do come up as poverty. And I don't feel the same need, though, for Stanford students as I do for people who really need to have that transitional support, for needs assistance. Because I do know they often are on grants, and so they don't have income, but they do have the cash flow. Not that they want to spend it on rent, and not that they don't have their own catastrophes to think about, but it's still, it is something that does hit the register, and it's hard to filter that out. And so just coming up with different ways to help us consider our dynamics and our changing dynamics, I think is really important, because that's what I use as a tool when it comes to some of the considerations that we have to make when we're approving projects. So.
Thank you so much, Mayor Shepherd. It's really, really wonderful to have you as a liaison and having you so forthcoming with us.
Well, I think I'll just keep filtering this. It's like, I wanted Claudia to come. If you guys don't know about our Palo Alto, there really is a role for everybody to play. So, working with her, if each of the commissions wanted to come up with just one part of the ideas part, it would be fantastic, because your lens is going to be very different from the other commission lens. And then we'll feel the whole complement of all the pieces that we have in place to kind of support our community as we process out into, I was listening to Ray talk about getting out of your comfort zone. Quite frankly, a lot of people are out of their comfort zone right now. And I know I get out of my comfort zone just to try to bring civility back into the conversation. And so this is part of the effort right now, is to get back into the comfort of civility and civic engagement and that type of thing, instead of, and we do have that in all parts of town, whether it's the Newell Street Bridge or the impacted parking that's going on in the downtown area. It doesn't seem, the conversation seems to have the same tone, and we're just trying to reset and rebalance that tone as we move forward, because we are going to be making significant decisions that will create more change to try to eliminate some of the unintended consequences of our prosperity here in Palo Alto. So, which we don't want to have go away either. So.
No, it is nice to have problems of prosperity, though. We're a fortunate community. All right, thank you.
For example, when you talk about our Palo Alto, immediately I think of, or when we were talking about Made in America, I think of the two topics that I am very interested in, which is identity and pride. Right. And then you mentioned Stanford students. I think of Berkeley, where I came from, and that this is a university town, and that whole population. We don't think of it, on the other hand, when we're voting or things of that nature, we don't think of them as part of the, generally as part of the community.
Well, they are part of the community, and yet has that eclecticness of a college life that comes with a bundle of student loans usually that can get you through, and yet you still pop up on the radar for not having any income. So it's just those kinds of things that if you can help us identify how many grad students are in town, I think that would be useful for me, to know that that's identifiable and not part of the bundle of people that make less than $25,000 a year.
Because many of them are a transient population too.
They're academic transients, and so it's and we're always going to have it. Although we also do, here, and we get a little waves of this when there's landlord-tenant issues, and so that's also something that could be emerging, because as Ventura possibly regentrifies for whatever reason, because our focus area in our comprehensive plan is California Avenue, which backs right up there, and the Fry's area and all of that. I think everybody knows what happens with Palo Alto property and the Palo Alto miracle of the Palo Alto property. Still just taking a look at that. When I have my conversations about gentrification with my friends in East Palo Alto, they lament about it, and I say, well, actually, we're having the same experience, because when the place where you take your car in for a loop job, when that decides to close up shop because they're going out of business, it's not going to reopen as a loop shop again. It will reopen as a boutique something for our, which will be reflective of our prosperity, and that's really challenging right now. So we are in that comfort zone time warp because we're watching it go. And we do get a lot of emails about some of the downtown businesses here that are, I think, our professional photographer is leaving because of the rents. So to say that gentrification, and that's probably the wrong term, because gentrification is typically when you're completely displacing a whole type of community or class of community, but at the same time, it has that same effect here. It's just different. So you don't see some of the old, no new books went down to Los Altos, So
And so we are being asked to try to keep that. So in the ways we can do it is to make sure that ground floor is retail. And that means it won't be office expense, which is a lot more expensive. So that's our only technique that we can't kind of beg people to stay. But we are taking a look at seeing, some like the Gateway project. We did ask for ground floor nonprofit space rent, so that they would get the 50% discount for selling rent, so that they could have I think chambers moving in there. So we are trying to make those attempts, but it is a challenge, and it's a very different challenge from other communities that really are truly having a whole suite of social, economic transition in their gentrification.
So I think our final agenda item is
The last word. Just remember, a reminder, I sent it out, I believe, yesterday. We finally have a little more details about the California Association of Human Rights Organizations that will be in San Francisco, April 24th and 25th. So as soon as I get things, I will pass them on to you. I have not gotten anything new about the April 8th HRC event in Mountain View.
We're getting the one in San Francisco. Do we need to register? Because I went to a website, I didn't see any place to register.
I just don't think they're that far yet, unfortunately. It's, like I said, I'm on the committee. I was on a conference call several months ago, and they haven't even brought that group back together. So I'm not sure. I think what's really happening is the San Francisco Human Rights Commission has a decent staff, and they're just working, I think, at this point with the entities that agree to be speakers. So I still think it has the potential to be really good.
Yes.
So, the RFP for the $250,000 for the intensive case management for the homeless housing, that RFP is closed. And there will be a panel that will be meeting in the next couple of weeks to decide that the case management agency. So as that, I get more information on who is chosen. There's the one for North County, South County, and San Jose. So there is a panel that will be deciding those. I will let you know, and then hopefully that agency will be on board as soon as possible and start to do good things. HISRAP, second year HISRAP, it's really a more formality. We'll go to the finance committee. It's just an opportunity to, let them know some highlights of what has been happening. We are not asking for any increase for the second year because that's not the direction of extra income that we have to do so. The HISRAP PAC Avenidas issue is going on the 25th. It's still going on the 25th. It's at 6 o'clock. We are first on the agenda. So I know the chair and vice chair are going to be there. The other commissioners are invited. Yes, Commissioner Morin? That's March 25th. It's a Tuesday, 6 p.m. The last thing that I wanted to, bless you, I think the last thing I wanted to say is next month's meeting, it's my daughter's spring break. I will not be here, so I've been asked to ask if it's the will of the HRC to meet another night the week before or the week after, or to continue to meet that week, and then I will ask one of my colleagues to stand in for me. So we could, if it's the will to keep it, because that's just easiest, or if you want to doodle it, then, staff can doodle another time for the week before or the week after. So.
Okay, well, I personally feel a little separation anxiety if Minka's not here, because Amy's transitioning out, Mary's transitioning in, and I feel like there's too much change for me.
Amy would still be here next month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can we maybe just doodle, if people prefer to keep the meeting date as is, that, I mean, we can all
Okay.
work with that if people are amenable to roll
Yeah, we
it.
can do a two-part doodle.
Okay, I think that would be great.
And I believe, oh, and there's the Stanford policy intern, there's no decision made yet.
All right, so thank you so much, Minka.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now, do we have any agenda items for next time? Oh, yes, we've kept you very late. Good night, Mayor Shepherd.
Thank you.
We have one item, which is council buddy assignments, and I would like to add a subcommittee update.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I have something.
Okay.
When you're done.
I thought we were letting the council buddy go. Council was so busy.
Right.
Yeah, I think we thought that too, but then somehow, when we had our study session, it got reinvigorated, and Mark Berman had sworn up and down that he was going to. Did he connect with Greer? Oh, Claude. Yeah. So.
But I'm leaving, so.
Yeah. Well, why don't we put it on the agenda in terms of discussing whether we want to continue it or disband it, because it's.
Yeah, all this. That if you really had to talk to a council member.
Okay. Well, maybe let's formalize what if any relationship buddy's relationship will have. And that's all I think I have. Minka, did you have something else?
So I will continue to try to get a hold of an admin person for Judge Manley. That's been a little challenging, of having been hung up on multiple times after being transferred. So I will continue to.
Can you maybe ask Gary if he can help you connect?
I asked Gary. Gary does not know him. I asked
Okay.
Gary if he had an in with Judge Manley, and he said no.
Okay.
So I did ask him that. So I will continue. I'll try again tomorrow to get Judge Manley. The other thing is there has been some program changes at the Opportunity Center in the way they interact with those that are drop-in clients that come in, that are kind of significant, interesting changes, and they have requested to come present to the HRC.
Oh, that sounds great.
So
would that be Philip Daw?
that would be
Mila?
Philip and Mila.
Okay, that would be great. All right, anyone have anything else they want to put forward as a possible agenda item for next time? All right, if not, then we are adjourned. Thank you all so much.